Chapter 29-22 The wedding 8 being sat so close together in a private space made her feel even more awkward. She wanted to stand up and adjust her sitting position, but thought that it would be too obvious. Hence, she discreetly coughed to clear her throat before saying, "This car needs an additional seat." Difui merely looked at her and chuckled. "Everyone who gets married will need to sit this way. What's wrong? Are you shy?" Gu Shijio raised her chin slightly as she replied, "No, I am not. I am a divine lord. How can I be shy because of this? Besides, this is all just a show. It's just that I'm much older than you. So, it's a bit—" She could not think of the right word for a moment. So Difui went on for her, "It makes you feel like an old cow that eating young grass, right? Or does it more closely resemble a flower being inserted into cow dung?" Gu Shijio was speechless. "I'm not an old cow. I'm also not cow dung either. Forget it. I will not care about it. I will forgive you for the nonsense that you are uttering." Sternly, she then turned to face him and found that he was also looking at her. As they were seated rather closely, her lips accidentally caressed his chin. She quickly lifted her head to the back, and because she moved too quickly, the back of her head had slammed into the window. The collision surely would not hurt her, but she was left red-faced by the incident. "What are you doing so close to me?" She somehow always found herself out of order when she was with him. Difui looked at her innocently as he replied, "Isn't it the fault of the seats?" Gu Zijia's gaze suddenly fell on his chin, and she noticed that there was a faint lip print. She had just remembered that her lips were painted red with lipstick. The grease was too visible. It was the living proof of the crime. Quickly, she drew out a silk handkerchief and wanted to wipe the lipstick off his chin. However, the moving vehicle unexpectedly came to an immediate halt. Unprepared, Gu Shijio immediately tumbled on his body. In that swift moment, her lips were printed on his cheek, leaving another piece of evidence to the crime on his face. Rendered speechless by the sudden escalation of events in the vehicle, she steadied herself and listened attentively to the commotion outside. "Who are you? Where did this drunkard come from? Aren't you bold? How dare you to stop the wedding parade of the Divine Lord? Go away! Go away!" Then, the sounds of drawing their weapons were heard. The people responsible for protecting the vehicle were ready to take action. Surely, they were no ordinary people, but a phalanx team composed of masters sent from the Six Realms. These people could easily defeat 1,000 opponents in a battle, let alone one drunkard in front of them. However, this time, they had encountered a fierce battle. In just 3 punches and 2 kicks, their opponent had propelled one of their comrades into the crowd. It made everyone around shocked and clamored. Gu Zijia's heart suddenly moved. Was he? She was about to go and check on it herself, but Difui stopped her. "You are the bride. You should not leave the vehicle. I will go and settle it." He then bent down slightly and went out of the car. At that moment, Gu Shijio suddenly recalled that there were still 2 prints of her lips on Difui's face. "Master! Master! I want to see you." There was a cry from outside the vehicle. It was Fan Qianqi's voice. Gu Shijio clenched her fingers together tightly. Sure enough, it was him. What was he doing here at this time? The man was no longer a kid. He should at least have some common sense. Just as she was about to get angry with him, Fan Qianqi's voice was ringing in her ear again. "Master, the marriage between you and him is all just part of a deal, right? You do not really love him. You just want to make me give up on you, right?" I pang. A colorful light shone brightly outside the vehicle, and Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat this time. She knew that Difui had taken action. She could tell from the light that his attacks were not too light or too heavy, but just enough to stop Fan Qianshi from shouting. Chapter 29-23 The Wedding 9 Difui, what did you do? Do you dare to punish me? Difui waved his sleeves and lazily replied, "Why not? If you continue to make trouble, I will make sure you end up lying down horizontally." "You? How dare are you? What qualifies you to treat me this way? I am going to be the husband of your master, so naturally, I am qualified to teach her disciple on her behalf." Difui folded up his sleeves as he spoke. Fan Qianshi stared at him in disbelief. "We both know that she doesn't love you." "You are wrong. She has the final say on whether she loves me or not you. Difui lifted his chin slightly, and the sunlight blazed on his handsome face, revealing the lipstick prints on his cheek and chin. These two lipstick prints were like two flags planted on his face, but it felt like two slaps on Fan Qianqi's face. The onlookers started to persuade Fan Qianshi to stand down. Mr. Qianshi, the Divine Lord really likes National Master D. They have been in love with one another since they were in the Devil Kingdom. Yes, Mr. Qianshi, you don't have to worry. Only National Master D suits the caliber of your master. Since her abilities are unrivaled, no one can actually threaten her to fall in love with them. It must be of her own willingness. Fan Qianqi's face went ashen, but his eyes were blood red. He looked at Gu Shiju and tried to beg, "Master, don't marry him. I like you." He seemed to be determined and was willing to make his confession in public, but unfortunately, he was not able to finish his sentence because his neck suddenly went cold, and he was not able to talk anymore. Gu Shiju, who had been sitting in the car, was now in front of the carriage and looked at Fan Qianshi. "Qianshi, you are drunk. Stop talking nonsense. Come on." Two children suddenly emerged and saluted her. "Divine Lord, bring him back to sober him up." If she had continued to allow him to speak, she would have ended the apprenticeship offered to him. Yes, the two little children were a bit hesitant at first. When they went forward to Fan Qianshi, they were pushed back by him. Although Fan Qianshi could not speak, his pair of bloodshot eyes were staring at Gu Shiju with a burning fire in them. He opened his mouth to try to speak, but he could not utter a word. Suddenly, his blood pressure surged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He glared at Gu Shiju fiercely, and tears started to roll down his cheeks. Gu Shiju trembled slightly at the sight of his misery. She abruptly moved her eyes away from his face as she sealed his acupuncture point. When she was about to pass him over to the attendants, Wu Qinyan rushed out from the crowd and knelt in front of her. "Divine Lord, please leave him with me. I will bring him back and sober him up." Upset, Gu Shiju merely waved her hand at her. "This child likes to get drunk and says unreliable things. I'm tired of it. Qinyan, I will pass him to you. Please make sure you keep him sober and prevent him from getting drunk again." She threw a pill to Wu Qinyan, which could help reverse the effects of alcohol on one's body. Wu Qinyan accepted it and pulled Fan Qianshi up to his feet. She quickly left. Just like that, the small incident was over, and the parade continued to move forward. While they were on their way to Gu Xiji's place, the pair were still sitting side by side in the vehicle, but Gu Shiju had no interest in talking to him anymore. She looked down at the ground and was in deep thought. "Are you regretting your decision?" Difui broke the silence. Gu Shiju took a deep breath and calmed herself. She was definitely not in the best state of mind, as her head was spinning. She rubbed her eyebrows to try to ease the tension as she replied, "His obsession is too deep. I didn't expect him to act so rashly." Difui looked at her again and slowly asked, "In fact, I'm a little bit curious. Two of you have been accompanying each other for so many years." Chapter 29-24, The Wedding 10 Previous Index. Next, add bookmarks. Difui looked at her and slowly asked, "In fact, I'm a little bit curious. Two of you have been accompanying each other for so many years. It's not strange for him to have fallen for you. Also, I can tell that you do care about him too. No rule forbids one to have a relationship with their apprentice. So why are you making things so difficult?" Gu Shiju frowned and answered impatiently, "I only see myself as his master. I do not feel anything else for him that a man and a woman in love would normally feel." "What about me?" Difui suddenly asked. "You?" Gu Shiju furrowed her brows even more. "Is this wedding not an agreement between you and me?" Difui's eyes were slightly darkened, but he refused to let the matter go. "I asked you about your feelings toward me. Is it even worse than what you feel for Fan Qianshi?" Gu Shiju was stunned. "You are not comparable to him." Difui's body went stiff almost instantly. "So it turns out that in your heart, I am not even better than him." Gu Shiju was speechless. Having one Fan Qianshi in her life had already been such a big headache to her, and now Difui was at it again. It made Gu Shijio even more frustrated. She blurted out without thinking too deeply. Why are you asking so many questions? It is just an agreement. Why are you asking me so many things? Difui, are you really falling in love with me? Difui remained silent. In fact, he was silent for a moment, before he suddenly sat up straight and faintly replied, All right, I won't ask you any more questions, Agio. Since this wedding is what you want, you don't have to think about the other consequences. I only hope that you and I can go through with the wedding and finish the show. After all, I have sacrificed so much for this wedding. He smiled and then added a sentence. Do not forget, I am also your disciple. Gu Shijio was speechless. You do not recognize me as your master anyway. Nevertheless, she still reassured him. Do not worry. The wedding will be completed. Difui held out his hand to her and said, Come on, let's make an oath. No matter what happens in the middle, you will not abort the wedding. Gu Shijio felt that he was rather foolish. We don't need this, right? Difui looked at her with a smile, but he did not say anything nor not take back his palm. Seeing that he was not about to back away, Gu Shijio agreed to take the oath. Read more chapter at VIP Novel. Difui remarked in a serious manner. If you stop this wedding, I will never forgive you, and I will never have any connection with you in this life. Gu Shijio thought that he was overreacting, but since she was not in the mood to make things worse, she grabbed his hand and agreed. Besides, she committed to marrying him, so she could not imagine why she would back out. Even if she did not get the blessings from the heavens and got struck by a thunderbolt, she would want to see this wedding through. It turned out that God did not seem to quite agree with their deal. Gu Shijio brought the groom back to her place, and the wedding was carried out in an orderly manner. When the hall was full of guests and they were going to take their vows, Wu Qianyin suddenly rushed in and kneeled in front of Gu Shijio. Divine Lord, help. Young master, he has broken into God's forbidden land. Gu Zijia's facial expression changed in an instant, and the red silk in her hand fell to the ground. What? While everyone was still confused about what had happened, Gu Shijio only uttered a few words, I am sorry. Without delay, she teleported away and disappeared. Just like that, Difui, who still held the red silk in his hand, was left with a house of guests. Everyone looked at each other and asked, Where is the forbidden land? I don't know. It is the first time I am hearing of it. Don't look at me. I don't know. The last person who spoke was famous for having insider information around the 6 realms. Chapter 29-25 The Wedding 11 Don't Look at Me. I don't know. The last person who spoke was famous for having insider information around the 6 realms. If he did not know, then it was likely that the rest would not know either. Therefore, everyone looked at Wu Qinyan, who was still kneeling, but she did not explain the situation to them. She stood up and looked around before making an abrupt announcement. I am sorry, everyone. Our Divine Lord has something urgent to handle. She will not be able to complete the wedding. I apologize for wasting everyone's time. When our Divine Lord returns, I am sure that she will explain the situation to everyone. Everyone remained silent. Now, they all looked at Difui, whose face was a little pale. He seemed to be caught in a daze, and no one knew what was on his mind. Nevertheless, standing there in his wedding attire made him look rather lonely. Fortunately, many of his friends were among the people present. Hence, they decided to comfort him. National Master, you don't have to be sad. Mr. Qianshi requires the Divine Lord's assistance. Once she saves her disciple, she will definitely select another good date to marry you. Yeah, this is an unexpected accident. I'm sure it is not something that the Divine Lord wanted. Rest assured, the Divine Lord will not regret the marriage. When she returns, she will definitely choose another wedding date. All of us will attend again, and everything will be back to normal. Difui finally looked up at his friends and spoke calmly. There is not going to be a wedding. Everyone was confused, but they were about to be enlightened. Since we could not make things work this time, it proves that we are not destined to be together. I will let her go. From now on, I will have no connection with the Divine Lord. He threw away the red silk in his hand, and it shattered in the air, turning into a butterfly that danced around the hall. As soon as he did so, Difui left. The crowd was certainly left stunned by the incident. The Forbidden Land was a place where only the god of creation could enter. Because of the lack of time, Gu Shijiu worried that if she suddenly immortalized, she would not have time to explain about the place to Fan Qianshi. Thus, after Fan Qianshi recovered from the injuries he sustained when becoming a great deity, she brought him to the Forbidden Land and took him around the place. She explained to him about the taboos here and clearly told him not to enter blindly until he practiced to level 8 of a great deity. Otherwise, his continued existence would not be guaranteed. Gu Shijiu did not expect Fan Qianshi to do such a crazy thing. It was clear to her that her apprentice was not going there to explore the place, but to end his life. She made several teleports in quick succession and entered the Forbidden Land of God very quickly. Sure enough, at the entrance, she found Fan Qianshi burned in a ball of fire by the fire of God. She cast a spell to destroy the fire in an instant, and then pulled him to the exit and left before the gate was closed. Fan Qianshi's clothes were almost completely burned into ashes, and his body was badly burnt too. He looked like a burnt piece of paper. Gu Zijia's heart was racing as she was not sure if she would be able to make it. The gate to the Forbidden Land could only be opened for a limited time. Once it was opened, it would close by itself within half an hour and would only open again after a month. If she came a little later, she would either not have been able to get in or get out. While a month for her inside the Forbidden Land was not a concern, for Fan Qianshi, who seemed to be addicted to pain, he would not even last for a couple of hours. That was why Gu Shijiu rushed here so eagerly and did not even have time to explain the matter to Di Fui. Now that she finally saved this insensible disciple, Gu Shijiu was also very angry at him. In fact, she threw Fan Qianshi to the ground in his semi-conscious state. But just when she was about to turn away, Fan Qianshi eagerly pulled the corner of her dress. Chapter 29-26 The Wedding 12 Master, you are still reluctant to leave me, right? Gu Shijiu immediately pulled back her dress and coldly warned him. Fan Qianshi, I am very disappointed to you. Seeking death is not a manly thing to do. Don't make me look down on you any further. She turned and wanted to teleport away. It took her less than half an hour to get here, so she should be able to make it back to the wedding if she rushed back now. Nevertheless, Fan Qianshi rushed forward and hugged one of her legs. Master, don't leave me. If you leave, I won't live. Gu Shijiu was stunned and slowly turned around and kicked him off with her other foot. Her voice was as cold as ice this time. Then you can die. But remember, this is the last time I will save you. After that, she did not turn back and swiftly teleported away. No matter how capable she was, she could not save someone who sought death. If Fan Qianshi were looking for death again after she saved him, she would not keep him back. She would lose her successor, but if the next god of creation could not even get through this hurdle, she did not think he would be a good replacement anyway. Fan Qianshi rolled into the mud as he got kicked away. He looked extremely embarrassed, but his heart could not ache any further. He almost sacrificed his life in this hopeless chase, and ultimately, he got nothing from it. He smiled miserably and muttered, Master, is your heart made of iron stone? You are so cruel. How can you do this to me? Who else in this world can like you as much as me? Then he laughed out loud as he continued, Master, I regret everything. If I never knew you. Unfortunately, there was no rewind button in life. He knew that he was destined to meet her and become her apprentice. He gripped 2 handfuls of mud and clenched it tightly. God, since you created me, why would you create Di Fui? He felt that his current circumstances resembled the encounter between Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang. Suddenly, he punched the ground viciously and said, I don't believe that I am inferior to him in any way. I will be better than him. Master, one day you will regret treating me this way. Di Hao, who was watching all the scenes unfold, could not help but sigh. It seemed that Fan Qianshi's hatred had grown out of love. That was why he created so many troubles for his parents in their next lives. In fact, his mother did care about him. She just did not really love him. She had good intentions for the man and wanted him to focus on his practice. The liveliness in the Tianyin Valley had now faded as the place became deserted. Di Fuyi's whereabouts were not known, and his guests seemed to have been blown away by the wind. They had all disappeared. Only Wu Qinyan was there, directing the servants to pack up the food in the main hall. Gu Shijio was still puzzled as she stood at the door. She did not expect the entire place to become this deserted after she left for only an hour. When she appeared, everyone who stayed back quickly went forward to greet her. Wu Qinyan also hurriedly asked, "Divine Lord, where is the young master? Did you manage to save him?" "He isn't dead yet." Gu Shijio replied bluntly and then asked, "Where is Di Fui?" "He left. He left right after you left." "What did he say?" Wu Qinyan paused for a moment before finally telling her master what Di Fui had said before he left. Gu Shijio was stunned by what her servant had conveyed to her. She took a deep breath and replied, "I will go and find him." She then turned and teleported away. Gu Shijio was not able to find Di Fui. When she rushed to his starry hall, it was already empty. Both he and his servants were not there. Gu Shijio stood in the hall and could not believe how things had changed so abruptly. Chapter 29-27 will not break the promise. It seemed like Di Fui had built this place 20 years ago, and by the looks of it, it was not easy to build. It would take a skilled craftsman a full decade to complete it. Although he only came back once a year, he had assigned some capable servants here to take care of the matter of the house. But now, even those servants were gone. Gu Shijio subconsciously turned to the wedding hall and room that he had decorated just earlier in the day. All the red decor had been completely removed. In fact, the hall was empty and the room was cold and deserted. The sight of this made Gu Shijio stunned for a moment. Quickly, she took out the directed audio spell that she used to contact him and courageously dialed for him. Nevertheless, there was no light emitted from the device at all. There was only one way that this to happen. He had destroyed the directed audio spell that he carried. It seemed that the deal he had made with her was not merely to spite her, but turn out to be the truth. He had broken all connections with her entirely. Di Fui was, indeed, a very decisive man. When he decided to let go, he would let go entirely. Read more at Ellis' novel. She remembered the oath that they had made together in the car. "If you stop this wedding, I will never forgive you, and I will never have any connection with you in this life." Since she stopped the wedding, she could not blame him. He was keeping his end of the arrangement. If she really wanted to blame someone, she could only blame herself. If she had told him to wait for an hour before she left, perhaps he would have waited. But she was too panicked at the time and only said sorry before teleporting away. Would he really have no contact with her in the future? No, he was secretly her apprentice, and they still need to lift the apprenticeship. She slowly sat down on the staircase and embraced her knees. She looked at the sky and watched the clouds gather together while the sun had set and the moon slowly rose. Since Di Fui could let go of everything so decisively, it proved that he would have been able to let go of her in the future, so that was a relief. However, there was a feeling of sullenness in her heart, like a big stone was inside her chest, and made it difficult for her to breathe. "Divine Lord." A young green-robed teenager appeared in front of her and bowed to her. Gu Shijio was startled at first, but recognized that the boy was a servant who was with Di Fui. They met each other several times in the Devil Kingdom. "Where is your master?" Gu Zijia's voice was a bit hoarse. "Where is he? Can you tell him that I want to meet him and explain something to him?" The young green-robed man smiled but did not answer her. He bowed and said, "My master asked me to pass you a message." "What message?" "Don't forget the promise you said you would fulfill after 2.5 years. Divine Lord has broken her promise once. Please don't break it twice." 2.5 years later, that was when she had promised him that she would free him from his apprenticeship with her. Gu Shijio paused for a moment and smiled awkwardly. "Sure, I will never break that promise." Read more at Ellis' novel. Thank you. The young green-robed man bowed again. Then he turned and left. Gu Shijio did not feel very comfortable leaving things the way they were. She guessed that the green-robed man would report to Di Fui about what she had replied. So she tailed him invisibly, she should be able to see Di Fui again. As a proactive person, Gu Shizhou stealthily followed the young man. However, she had not expected the servant to wander around the place. In fact, he went to a restaurant to drink a pot of tea leisurely. At first, Gu Shizhou thought that Di Fui was hiding in this restaurant, so she secretly searched through the restaurant while the young man drank his tea. Unfortunately, she found nothing. She went back to the tea room and found that the young green-robed man finally got up from his seat. Chapter 29-28 will not break the promise too. She went back to the tea room and found that the young green-robed man finally got up from his seat. He suddenly bowed to the air and faintly said, "Divine Lord, I know that you must be following me. However, my master has made himself clear that there is no need to see you anymore. I believe that you want put me in a difficult situation. Please go back." Gu Shizhou was speechless. She watched as the young man stepped away from the table, but did not follow him out of the restaurant. Di Hao looked at his mother, standing there alone, and suddenly felt a little distressed. His mother lacked the feeling of love and did not understand the affection that most men and women shared. Nevertheless, by instinct, she was still attracted to his father. If any other man had treated his mother this way, they would have been killed right away. The main reason why his father chose to let go was because of his decisive character. The second reason was that he was really disappointed. His open heart could not bear the constant feelings of rejection and disappointment over and over again. Although his father was able to feel love, once he felt that there was no hope, he would really let go and cut his losses. However, could he really let go? Di Hao was actually exhausted, but he decided to look into the past again. He knew that it was nearing the end. In the next 2 years, Gu Shizhou did not look for Di Fui, and Di Fui, naturally, did not see her again. Gu Shizhou was very busy writing some unique techniques that she had developed as the god of creation. She had laid out the most complicated maps of the stars, and then threw it to Fan Qianshi to practice. After he escaped death, Fan Qianshi was awakened by the reality of his life, and upon returning to the Tianyin Valley, he pleaded with Gu Shizhou for a second chance and spent a full month in the snow before being allowed to enter the valley again. Although Gu Shizhou allowed him to enter the valley, she did not even give him a smile. Other than the necessary conversations they had to have, she would not talk much with him. Fan Qianshi never brought up matters of the past. He practiced daily and absorbed the unique knowledge that Gu Shizhou passed down to him, which helped him grow stronger very quickly. Every now and then, he would also leave the valley. Some outings were short, and others even lasted more than 2 months. No one knew where he went, and Gu Shizhou never questioned him either. Occasionally, Gu Shizhou would also leave the valley for work. In some of the wine cellars, she would hear of the greatest achievements Di Fui had made of late. For example, it only took him 2 years to transform the Ghost Kingdom. Furthermore, his subordinates were growing in numbers every day in all of the 6 realms. He had established a robust information network so that he was always informed of the ongoing in each kingdom, and there was now virtually nothing that he did not know. The Emperor of the human world was brilliant. He invited him over and made him the national master while delegating supreme power to him, letting him make radical reformation, even if it hurt the royal family. He was getting closer and closer to becoming the ruler of the 6 realms now, and his identity was heralded all over that no one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him aside from the god of creation. Quietly, Fan Qianshi's growth was also very swift. After all, he was the natural successor of the god of creation. Once he concentrated on his practice, everything started moving in his favor. In just 2 years, his skills had reached the 7th stage of a great deity. He had also mastered half of the starry map that Gu Shizhou had taught him. Although he was still unable to create the real star, there was already the power to move mountains, reclaim the sea, and pick the stars. Gu Shizhou was generally happy with his progress. It was a relief to her that he managed to overcome the issues of the past. Lately, she realized that most of her memory as the god of creation was returning to her. Perhaps it was a sign that her inevitable immortalization was soon approaching. Chapter 2929 will not break the promise. 3. One of the memories she recalls now is that she used to have a candle dragon as a guardian. Apparently, every god of creation would be gifted with one. She had hers about 10,000 years ago, but in a big catastrophe, her candle dragon died from protecting her. Apparently, she had been lethargic since then until now. It was then that she recalled that every god of creation would catch a small candle dragon for their successor and help them domesticate it. Nevertheless, the domestication of the little candle dragon was a rather lengthy process. She did not think that she would have so much time here, so it was better for him to domesticate it personally. When thinking of catching one, she also remembered that the candle dragon had a strange attribute. It would recognize whoever saw it first as its owner. For this reason, when she went to the clan of the Candle Dragons, she took Fan Qianshi along with her and hoped that he would personally catch one. She would be there to help him from the side. The Candle Dragon land was famously known as a dangerous place on the mainland. Without the appropriate skills, no one would dare to come here, as it would be as good as walking into their grave. The sky here regularly rotated from bright to dim in this place. When it was sunny, it felt like it was daytime with the clear skies, but when it was dark, one could not even see their 5 fingers. It was absolute darkness. Even those who gifted with good vision would not be able to see anything. They had to solely rely on touch and their 6th sense to maneuver about the place. Gu Shijiu took Fan Qianshi to the clan of the Candle Dragons, but did not take the water path discovered by Di Fui. She was not familiar with the waterway and did not think her water ability was that polished, so she did not want to take this risk. Fortunately, she remembered another way to enter the Candle Dragon clan. The place was undoubtedly huge, with an area as vast as the Arctic Ocean. It was a world of its own, with all kinds of different beasts that even Gu Shijiu did not know how to name. One thing was certain: the 110 Candle Dragons here were at the top of the food chain. They were the kings here, and no other animals would dare to provoke them. Read more at This novel. The broad-leaved forest covered the sky and the sun. The color of the grass was vivid and glistened when a light shone on it. Surveying the area made them feel like they were alive during the uncivilized times, especially when they saw strange animals flying past them from time to time. Of course, the animals here were incredibly fierce. Even those who were not near the top of the food chain could easily kill an outsider. The standard rule of survival was to be the strongest so that other creatures would not dare to attack you. Most of the animals here were generally huge, which reminded them of the dinosaur era. As compared with these fierce beasts, Gu Shijiu and Fan Qianshi were extraordinarily petite. It was as if they were specially made for other animals to bully them. Many beasts targeted them as prey when they made their way around the place. Nonetheless, these predators did not manage to capture their victims. Instead, they were either hunted or killed by the master and her apprentice. After traveling through the place for some time, both of them had reached into the depths of the clan, but did not see any of the Candle Dragons in sight. Master, is this really the land of the Candle Dragons? How have we not seen one? Do you think that the Candle Dragons are like cabbages that just lie all over the place? Fan Qianshi kept quiet and bowed his head after that remark. Gu Shijiu ignored him and continued to move forward. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi watched her from behind for a moment and then followed after her. All of a sudden, there were a few loud cries from the distance. Gu Zijia's eyes lit up as she heard them. Candle Dragon. From the sound of it, it was likely that there was more than one. Nevertheless, it sounded as though the dragons were provoked by something. Gu Shijiu pondered her options for a moment and then advised Fan Qianshi, "Wait here. I'll go and take a look." In a matter of seconds, her figure had disappeared. Fan Qianshi looked down at the ground and found a secret place to wait for her master patiently. Meanwhile, Gu Shijiu had not expected to meet Di Fui here. When she found him, the man was single-handedly battling with 2 candle dragons. The first thing that crossed Gu Zijia's mind was whether the man was here to steal another egg from the candle dragon. Was he addicted to eating their eggs? The candle dragon was known as an ancient mythological beast. One dragon could easily kill 2 masters at the great deity level. And now, Difui had provoked 2 dragons at the same time. Chapter 29:30 will not break the promise, for the 2 candle dragons were fighting valiantly, as if they encountered a ferocious enemy. The battle with Difui was so intense to the point where dust had covered the sky above them and made it rather dark. Even with Difui's current abilities, it was tough to deal with these 2 candle dragons at once. He tried to escape several times, but was blocked by them. These candle dragons were already seasoned fighters and knew how to apply different techniques in order to keep their prey in their grasps. Therefore, Difui could not find an opportunity to escape the battlefield for a while. Gushijio frowned slightly at the situation. With her current abilities, she could not cope with 2 candle dragons. Furthermore, even if she wanted to help him using her teleportation ability, it was difficult to get him while he was moving about, so she had to act smartly. The candle dragons had been chasing him around the place for some time, but could not land any blows to Difui, thanks to his steadfast agility. They were a little annoyed and raised their head and howled for a moment. Just then, the place had suddenly turned into a place as dark as night. Swiftly, a candle dragon took the opportunity to attack Difui while the conditions were changing. Difuius did not see the attack coming, and by the time he felt that a gust of wind had come to his face, it was already too late to hide. He made up his mind and decided to take the risk to hide in its stomach. Just then, another gust of wind swooshed past him, and his arm was grabbed. He was shocked and subconsciously wanted to push away, but he also heard the howling of the candle dragons in the distance, which made him change his mind. Teleportation. He narrowed his eyes to try to see the identity of the person that reached out to him. Although he could not see the person, he had already guessed the identity of the other party. After one teleport, the wind and howling had stopped. Difui stepped on the ground to try to sense his surroundings. Although he still could see what was around him, he could smell the fragrance of the plants and the unique scent of the person near to him. He forcefully withdrew his hand from her grasp and stepped back as he uttered, "Thank you for helping me, Divine Lord." This was their first encounter after 2 years and 5 months. It was undoubtedly their first dialogue as well. Difui's words were polite, but his tone was cold. Gu Shijio replied awkwardly, "No need to mention. You are welcome." She was somewhat not used to his politeness, so her reply came out a little weird. Although she did not know why, Gu Shijio had an indescribable feeling of grievance that twitched in her chest, making her eyes somewhat irritated. Fortunately, it was absolute darkness around the place, so they could not see each other. Therefore, Gu Shijio did not have to hide her expression. 2 years ago, her first reaction would be to quickly explain the incident that happened during the wedding when she ran away. But now, she only had a month left to live. The countdown was real, so why would she explain herself? It would only burden him. Therefore, she smiled and started a topic that she thought would not trigger any sadness. "Why are you here? Are you addicted to eating the eggs of candle dragons?" Difui remained silent for a moment before faintly asked, "Divine Lord, is this an inquiry?" Gu Shijio was speechless. Perhaps she could just pretend that she did not ask. The two continued to stand opposite each other and remained quiet for some time. Although she could not see him, she could definitely sense the strong aura around him and was inexplicably flustered. Just when she was trying to find another topic to cut the tension between them, there was something placed in her hand. It was an egg the size of a basketball. Gu Shijio was stunned. She blurted out, "So you did come to steal the egg. This one is for you to thank you for your help." Difui sounded indifferent as he passed her an egg. "You don't have to be so polite." In fact, Gu Shijio did not think that she had done much. "I don't want to owe you any kindness." Difui interrupted her, but this time he sounded colder. Gu Shijio did not reply this time. The candle dragon egg in her hand was like a hot yam. Difui decided to continue. "Our agreement is due in a month. I only hope that you will not break the promise again." Gu Shijio looked down at the ground as she replied, "Rest assured this time, I will not break the promise." "Good. I will choose to believe in you once again. You warned me that when we cancel the mentoring arrangement, there will be a catastrophe in the form of thunderbolts. Therefore, this candle dragon egg may help you." It is my compensation to you for your troubles. Chapter 29:31 will not break the promise 5. Gushijo gently stroked the egg in her hand as she replied, "Thank you very much." From a distance, the candle dragons could be heard howling in resentment. But soon, the doleful cries faded away, finally allowing the sun to penetrate through the dark clouds again. Once the sky was bright again, the two finally saw each other. Swiftly, Di Fui took the opportunity to examine their surroundings. Apparently, he had been here a few times. Therefore, the place was familiar to him. As soon as he decided which direction he wanted to go, he left without saying goodbye and did not even look back at Gushijo. As he walked away, the edges of his purple robes gently caressed the tip of the grass around him. With the egg in her hand, Gushijo could not find a way to express her gratefulness. She could only watch helplessly as he slowly disappeared into the distance. All she could do was sigh at the sight of the egg. The starry map had all the answers she sought for. Her death would definitely take place a month from now, and no amount of cradle dragon eggs could keep her alive. Logically speaking, the egg could be put to better use. Master, Fan Qianshi could be seen approaching her from afar and was dumbfounded as soon as he caught a better look at the egg in her hand. What is this? It is a candle dragon's egg. Gushijo then handed the egg over to Fan Qianshi. You are required to hatch it within 2 months. If not, I will never see you again. Master, I know nothing about hatching an egg like this, Fan Qianshi replied rather innocently. Within seconds of his reply, a book was then handed over to him. You will find every piece of information you need in this book. All right. Fan Qianshi promptly accepted the challenge. Since the master and her apprentice had gotten what they came for, there was no need for any further delay. The two of them headed back in the same direction for which they came. Dumbfounded, Fan Qianshi could not believe how easy it was for the egg to come into their possession. Master, I am aware that candle dragons despise anyone who comes to steal their eggs. The dragons will typically pursue the thieves to the end of the world. However, I have not seen you being pursued by any creature so far. With a flick of her wrist, Gushijo presented him with a bottle of herbs that carried an unusually pleasant scent. Fan Qianshi had no idea what it was, but kept his eyes on it. Gushijo took the time to explain it to him. This is known as the track masking scent. With a spray, the candle dragons could no longer trace my tracks. Furthermore, there was no way that they would waste time in a blind pursuit. Her last experience with the candle dragons had taught her a great lesson. Since then, she had been studying a way to hide her tracks in case she ever encountered one again. The scent that she concocted was the proud result of her experiments, which had also conveniently served its purpose this time. Fan Qianshi was intrigued by the effectiveness of the scent and wanted to keep it for further studies. To his surprise, Gushijo kept the bottle away. If everything goes right, you should be able to own a candle dragon as your majestic being very soon. There is no use for this scent anymore, she briefly explained. Fan Qianshi was certainly not on the same page. He was ambitious and wanted to revisit the place to hunt for another egg. That way, he could have 2 majestic pets. Gushijo threw him a quick, unimpressed look in the eye. Don't even think about it. Candle dragons are already at the edge of extinction. Even the powerful mythical beings cannot foretell their chances of survival. You already have one. You should not be greedy about it. Fan Qianshi dismissed the idea and bowed in acknowledgement of his master's words. As soon as they returned to the Tianyin Valley, Fan Qianshi isolated himself in his laboratory. He needed to quickly study the manual handed to him by Gushijo in order to hatch the candle dragon's egg. Based on her knowledge and experience, Gushijo assumed that he would not show himself for at least 2 months. By the time he left his laboratory, she would be long gone, but with the candle dragon's help, he would be able to make his way into the forbidden land of God. There, he would rise and become the mighty being that he was destined to be. She would also leave him with some books and information so that he could transition into the role seamlessly. In the span of 2 weeks, Gushijo finally completed all of her tasks. She made a count and realized that she had about 12 days left to live. Those were the days that she reserved for herself. To live boldly was her last reward to herself. Chapter 2932 will not break the promise 6. She indulged in good food and fine wine for the remaining days of her life. As a food connoisseur, she decided to live her last days by feasting on all her favorite food. To do so, she embarked on a brief adventure around all 6 worlds. With her tight schedule, she would very often have her meals at different places on the same day. For example, she would start her day in the Monster Kingdom and end up in a restaurant for dinner in the Celestial Kingdom. Of course, her frequent visits to the different restaurants had also exposed her to gossip around the place. These hearsays were typically involving D. Fui. His name was well spread to all 6 worlds now. Stories were created about his legendary encounters and conveyed by the storytellers in a myriad of sequences to the general public. Many were attracted. At most climaxes, the storytellers would often splutter the stories in enthusiasm, thus thrilling the listeners in excitement. While Gushijio was enjoying her meal in the underworld, she overheard a storyteller telling his audience about how D. Fui conquered the Devil Kingdom. It was certainly exaggerated, but nonetheless, she still found the story entertaining. No matter how exciting and inspirational the story of a hero can be, there still needed to be elements of love between a man and a woman in order to stir the emotions of the audience. Therefore, the snippets between the creator of the universe and National Master D were also added to the story to spice it up. Gu's Zygius name was brought up quite a few times, in fact. From the storyteller's version of the story, the creator of the universe could recognize a true hero when she saw one. She knew National Master D would ultimately become the ruler of the 6 worlds, so she assisted him in every way possible, and eventually, they fell in love. However, as destiny would have it, the match between the two would not be blessed. Therefore, the creator of the universe and the master of the 6 worlds were not allowed to be in love. The disciple of the creator of the universe also played a part in accelerating their breakup. Moments before their marriage, they finally decided to end their relationship. With a broken heart, National Master D decided to place his focus solely on the well-being of the people. Read more chapters at L. Is novel with Damped Spirits. The creator of the universe finally accepted their fate and left her emotions behind. Besides, the development of her disciple would require all of her attention. The storyteller spoke affectionately, with heartfelt emotions poured out into every word. His enraptured audience seemed to hang on to every word he said, waiting for the story to be finished. Throughout the day, Gushijio listened to some of the stories while indulging in wine. Little did she know that an entire day had swiftly gone by. The openness of the society came as a surprise to her. They were comfortable to publicly discuss matters relating to the creator of the universe and the ruler of the 6 worlds. It seemed that the local officers gave the public the freedom to express their opinions. Although the storyteller had exaggerated the stories, some of the contents still remained true. All of a sudden, Gushijio suddenly felt the urge to have a drink with D. Fui. His wines were indeed one of a kind, and she could not find the same taste anywhere else. There were only 2 days left before their next appointment, so she would be able to see him again very soon. Perhaps she could convince him to have another drink with her before the catastrophic thunderbolt struck them. Speaking of which, a roaring crowd immediately caught her attention. National Master Discarriage is here. Bewildered, she immediately looked out of the window and saw a flying ship that was sailing across the air. No other ship than D. Fui's would make this sort of dramatic appearance. The curtains were swaying lightly in the wind, giving her a glimpse of the person who was sitting inside the carriage. The man's entrance was seemingly more spectacular than the last time she saw it. Determined, Gushijio decided to teleport into his ship right away. D. Fui, what a coincidence that we are meeting again. You'd better be inviting me for a drink. Right then, she was stunned by something on the vessel and could not finish speaking. Chapter 2933, The Dissolution of Their Discipleship. D. Fui was not alone in the cabin. There were 7 of them there. Gu Shijio recognized all of their faces in an instant, as they were the rulers of all 6 different worlds. They had all gathered on the same ship. At that very moment, all eyes lingered on her in utter shock and disbelief. Despite the disguise of an ordinary woman that she had donned on herself, Gu Shijio could not conceal her identity. Her sudden teleportation into the cabin had already revealed her identity. Quickly, all the rulers stood and bowed to her authority in unison. Divine Lord. Difui rose to his feet as well and gave her a somewhat reluctant bow. I did not know that the Divine Lord was going to be present today. Please excuse my lack of proper greeting. His politeness had instantly drawn a clear line between them. It no longer made sense for Gu Shijio to be friendly with him at this point. She smiled to acknowledge their salutations and then said, "Everyone is here today." Shortly after, she added, "Shall we have a drink together?" It would be a farewell to mark her upcoming departure. With a frown, Difui politely replied, "It is an honor to be invited by the Divine Lord. However, we do have some urgent matters to attend to. Shall we postpone the invitation to a later time?" As soon as Difui turned her down, everyone else started to chime in, euphemistically. Some proposed to hold a banquet for her someday in the future. Some earnest ones even offered her a few tentative dates. With a smile, Gu Shijio teleported away without saying anything further. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. How many tomorrows would there be for her? The future was bright ahead of them, but not for her. Meanwhile, the rulers in the cabin all heaved a sigh. The creator of the universe had been very kind to them, and largely did not interfere with the mediocrity of ruling. What they had for her was truly a sense of respect, not intimidation. The same could not be said for Difui. They were completely in awe of him. Every order that he had for them would always be fulfilled without hesitation. As soon as Gu Shijio left, they were instantly reminded of the wedding that never took place. From the way Difui nonchalantly spoke to her, he seemed to have completely left the past behind him. National Master D was renowned for his vision and bravery, so there was no woman that he could not have. Why should he trouble himself by marrying into the bride's family? As a man, it must be embarrassing for him to marry into the bride's family, even though the bride was the creator of the universe. After the slight detour, they quickly re-engaged in their last discussion, which was unfortunately interrupted by Gu Shijio. Nevertheless, National Master D seemed to be absent-minded the entire time. He kept swirling the teacup in his hand, but did not even take a sip. National Master? National Master? What do you think? One of them decided to throw a question at him. Difui put down his teacup and asked, "What about it?" It was then that they realized that he was not even listening to their discussion. Instead of making the situation awkward, they quickly summarized the argument and waited for his instructions. "Hold on," Difui said with a firm voice. He then rose to his feet and approached his servant to give him a few orders. He watched as the servant left to execute his orders before rejoining the discussion in the carriage. However, he still seemed preoccupied with his thoughts elsewhere. It did not take long for the servant to return and report to him in a secret language. "National Master, for your information, the Divine Lord has left the underworld and is now heading towards the human world with a keen interest in a restaurant in the Tianhe village." Relieved, Difui waved for him to leave. He knew that Gu Shijio fancied the food from the restaurant in the Tianhe village. Although she no longer needed food to survive, her love for food prevailed. Chapter 29:30 For the dissolution of their discipleship too, he knew that Gu Shijio fancied the food from the restaurant in the Tianhe village. Although she no longer needed food to survive, her love for food prevailed. It seemed that her keen interest in food would not wither away, just like her inability to love. Not a bit had changed, even after decades. Gu Shijio spent another day indulging in various types of food in the human world. She had tried everything, all the delicious food, the unpalatable, and even the weird and exotic food. The amount of food she consumed had exceeded her stomach's typical capacity, so she decided to take a stroll along the streets to ease the discomfort of her bulging belly. As she went around observing the place, she realized that the human world was thriving, and the streets were crowded with both locals and visitors. The paper lamps on both sides of the street swayed gently in the wind, scattering their dazzle and wonder across the entire place. The well-lit place could certainly capture anyone's attention to the point where it shadowed the brilliance of the full moon. Gu Shijio was unaware of the date until she noticed the number of couples passing by. It was already the middle of the month, indicating that the lunar festival was upon them. On this occasion, everyone would generally be in pairs, and the men would pamper their female companions with gifts and laughter. "Juan, I want that piece of candy shaped as a man." The demand came from a lady with ragged clothes. Her companion, dressed in equally tattered clothing, hesitantly agreed. "All right." With gritted teeth, he paid 3 cents to buy the candy for her. The lady took another look around the booth and decided to pick out another piece of candy. "Here, have one for yourself." The man was obviously reluctant. I do not want one. I don't have a sweet tooth. These 2 sticks of sugar are supposed to come in a pair. We should take both of them so that we can be just as sweet." "Here, let's take it. Let's take it." The lady insisted. The man finally gave in and bought another one so that both of them could leave with a piece of candy each. "Juan, is it sweet?" "Sweet indeed. We shall be just as sweet as them." "Sure." Both of them walked away with big smiles, hand in hand. "Miss, would you like one?" The owner of the booth kindly offered, thus bringing Gu Shijio back from her preoccupation. She finally noticed that she had been standing in front of his booth the entire time. She took a look at the amount of candy that the man had at his booth and pointed at a number of them. "Yes, I will like all of these." There were about 30 sticks of candy that she picked out, so the man was in shock. Right after the exchange happened, he happily closed his booth and headed home to reunite with his family. Gu Shijio continued her stroll with a bunch of candy in her hands, not sure which one to bite into first. After some contemplation, she decided to take the one she found most pleasing to look at and took a bite. To a person with a discerning palate like her, the candy was not even considered tasty. There was even a slight hint of bitterness in the aftertaste. Perhaps the couple from before only thought that it was sweet because they were already feeling the same way. "Auntie, are you selling these sweets?" Someone asked while gently tugging on her robes. She looked down and saw that a group of kids had surrounded her. They were simultaneously looking at the sweets in her hand. There was a mixture of boys and girls in the group, but all of them seemed equally lively and adorable. Being in a good mood, she decided to share the sweets with these lovely children. "Here, they're for all of you." The kids quickly accepted the offer and sunk their teeth into the sweets. "Is it sweet?" she asked. "Yes, it is sweet. It tastes good. Very sweet. Thank you, Auntie." The children finished the sweets in just a few quick bites. Soon, they found something else that caught their attention and were quickly carried away in joy. Even though they were gone, their sweet laughter still echoed in her ears. Gu Shijio smiled as she watched them skip away. In fact, she was glad that they liked the sweets. Perhaps she was the only one who thought that they tasted bitter. Even with a stomach full of food, she could not help but feel a little overwhelmed by the void in her chest. As she followed the crowd on the street, she noticed that everyone was filled with laughter, so her solitariness suddenly saddened her. With her life ticking away, she was starting to feel a little scared. Chapter 29:35, The Dissolution of Their Discipleship. 3. All of a sudden, her craving for wine kicked in again. There was a sense of tastelessness in her mouth, and she could not think of anything better than filling that emptiness with fine wine. Indeed, she was reminded of the wine from Di Fui, especially during one of those days when they were together in the Devil Kingdom and still acting like a couple. At the time, Di Fui would always be present around her and bring her for good food and even some shopping. Those were the days when things were simpler. In fact, it was probably one of her fondest memories. In anticipation and fear, the day had finally come. Gu Shijio agreed to meet with Di Fui in a vast solitary desert in the Celestial Kingdom. The deserted barren territory was only filled with sand. There was not even a tree in sight. When Di Fui arrived, he caught her sitting on the sandy hill, staring at the scorching sun. She did not seem to care about the harm that the sun would do to her eyes. Also, she seemed a little lonely. His heart ached for her, but he was also relieved that she showed up as promised. "Divine Lord," he called out as he approached her from the front. She stood up and rubbed her eyes to look at him. Her black, watery eyes glistened under the sun. Uncomfortably, she rubbed her eyes again before asking, "Do you have any wine? I think we should drink to mark the farewell." Difui remained quiet. Was she trying to play any tricks again? No, Difui firmly denied. Gu Shijiu seemed a little disappointed, but the smile on her face remained. She then offered him some wine from a bottle. "I do. Shall we?" Subconsciously, she wanted to have another round of drinks with him. Perhaps one with more fun and less judgment. There would not be another opportunity for her. Read latest chapters at El Novel D. Fui honestly thought that she was playing tricks with him again. After all, her drunken behavior was somewhat problematic. He did not want to have to postpone this matter to another day. He gave her a firm look in the eye and calmly said, "Divine Lord, the dissolution must be enforced, whether you like it or not. If you really want to drink, I will drink as many rounds as you want, but only once we have both fully recovered from the catastrophe. But for now, I will have to decline. What if I died from the lightning strikes? I will never get another chance to drink again." Gu Shijio replied ambiguously. Difui took a moment to study her complexion and noticed that her cheeks were pinkish. She looked healthy on the surface. Her strength was perhaps even better than his, as far as he could observe. Would the thunderbolt really kill her? If she were to die, then Difui would be gone before her. Difui found her behavior to be just like a dishonest child who kept coming up with all kinds of excuses to delay doing something. "Don't worry. I will make sure that you survive the catastrophe. Nothing will happen to you or me." He had spent a significant amount of time to prepare for this day. He would not let anything get in his way. Gu Shijio saw the impatient look in his eyes and finally came to terms that she would not have another chance to drink with him again. There was no point in forcing him, anyway. Perhaps it had all come to an end for both of them. Difui looked at the sky and noticed that time was running out. It was best to get on with matters right away. He then urged, "Divine Lord, shall we begin? I have many things to attend to after this is done. We should not delay too much." "Fine," Gu Shijio replied, after taking a deep breath. She finally agreed to him. He was relieved and said, "I need a little time to set up." Swiftly, he took out a few magical items to set up a wizardry barrier around them. Many golden needles were placed at the edge of the barrier. Gu Shijio sat on a dune and watched as he made the preparation. Chapter 2936, The Dissolution of Their Discipleship 4. After a brief wait, Difui was finally done with the setup. He turned around and saw Gu Shijio sitting with her arms wrapped around her knees. Fixedly, she looked at him with a lack of engagement in her eyes. She seemed a little lost, like a child who was about to be abandoned. His heart ached for her again for a moment. But later, he laughed at the absurdity. She was the most superior being that had ever existed. Why would he even think of her as a child? As usual, he tended to overthink the situation whenever she was involved. He shook his head abruptly to dismiss the unwanted thoughts quickly and put his emotions aside. "Let's begin." He raised his hands and posed in a manner that suggested that he was ready to resist any of the impending thunderbolts. "All right," she agreed as she closed her eyes. Steadily, she sank her feet into the sand and took the chance to catch a quick breath. Then, she started to dissolve the discipleship. From this moment on, I, Gu Shijio, as the creator of the universe, will no longer be a master to Difui. Regardless of what happens, we shall embark on different paths from today onwards. Our lives will not cross paths from this moment on, and we will have nothing to do with each other anymore. Nothing to do with each other anymore? Difui's heart sank upon hearing her words. Once Gu Shijio was done, purple clouds started to surround them in the sky above, rolls upon rolls. Under the dark sky, her robes fluttered fiercely in the violent gusts of wind. "Fui, your turn now." He was overwhelmed by a sudden sense of anxiety, but it was too late for him to turn back. With a deep breath, he followed. "From now on, I, Difui, will no longer be a disciple to Gu Shijio. the Divine Lord. He did not say anything more, for he never intended to stay out of her life for good. 10 years was all he needed. After a decade, he would become a more capable man. When the time came, he would pursue her again and not give her the chance to escape. As soon as he finished speaking, the utterly stubborn love bracelet on their wrists shattered abruptly. The pieces then disappeared entirely. Something did not seem right. All he wanted to achieve was the dissolution of their discipleship. Nothing more. He stood right up and uttered, "This." Before he could say anything more, the first streak of lightning struck like the deadly blade of a grim reaper. As soon as the violence erupted, it felt like doomsday was upon them. He had never seen or expected such a horrifying sight. Di Fui subconsciously evaded the streaks of lightning. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio cast a streak of 7 colored rays to encapsulate him in a protective barrier. Just then, a streak of lightning hit the 7-colored layer of protection and immediately shattered it into pieces. The flash of white light actually penetrated the barrier and struck him. He could feel his veins boiling and aching in unspeakable pain. Even the color started to fade from his cheeks. The next streak of lightning was aimed at Gu Shijio. She made a turn to cover herself in a 7-colored barrier of protection. However, no amount of protection was enough. The lightning dispersed the protective layer and struck her hard from above. Her face immediately went pale after just one strike. The streaks of catastrophic lightning continued to rain down upon them, one at a time, leaving them no room to catch their breaths. Every time the lightning struck, she would always protect him by casting a barrier around him using her own spiritual power. Although it was not enough to stop the flash of electricity, at least she could help to absorb some of the force from hitting him head-on. After a while, the clouds finally went away, revealing the scorching sun from behind them. During the catastrophe, every part of Di Fui's body was in pain to the point where he would rather just die. But oddly enough, the pain disappeared along with the ominous purple clouds. The only thing he felt now was exhaustion. The man was so tired that he wanted to take a restful nap right away. However, he tried to stay awake and quickly checked on Gu Shijio. Chapter 2937, The Dissolution of Their Discipleship. 5. Gu Shijio stood firm and steady. Her clothes looked as neat and tidy as always. Not a strain of her hair was misplaced. In stark contrast, Di Fui looked like a complete mess in ragged clothes after the catastrophe. "Are you doing all right?" Di Fui took a step towards her and asked. Gu Shijio gently shook her head while dismissing his question with a wave. "I'm fine. Now go." Her voice sounded a little hoarse but was still clear. From the sound of her voice, it seemed that she was in a better condition than him. In fact, the only thing he noticed was that her complexion was a little pale, but nothing physically alarming. Unimpressed, Di Fui pursed his lips into a thin line. With another bold step forward, he then grasped her by the wrist. "Let me examine your pulse." All of a sudden, he could feel his hand being flung away fiercely. Apparently, Gu Shijio did not control her strength as she wanted to push his hand away. She ended up tossing the man about 30 feet away. Luckily, Di Fui had not entirely lost his defensive instincts. With a swift turn in the air, he managed to channel the force away and made a perfect landing. He looked back at her, only to catch an icy look in her eyes. There was an immense sense of authority as she looked down at him, immediately setting a distance between them. To add to Di Fui's disappointment, she spoke coldly. "You and I have nothing to do with one another now. You don't have to see me anymore." Immediately after speaking, she disappeared into thin air. Obviously, she had teleported away. Di Fui stood frozen for a moment. He closed his eyes and ignored the fear in his mind as he tried to make sense of the situation. His analysis told him that her strength should be around level 2 of a great deity. Her complexion was not so bad either. At least she could still perform teleportation. Her condition was much better than the last time he saw her in the glacier. From these observations, it was safe to assume that she was doing just fine, though her spiritual power might have been affected to a certain degree. She should be able to recover her strength after a few days in the glacier. He knew it was his fault for pushing her boundaries to the extreme, but he was really reluctant to continue being her disciple. He certainly did not want to walk in Fan Qianqi's footsteps. Then his eyes caught hold of his bare wrist. Di Fui's only intention was to stop being her disciple, so he did not fully understand why the love bracelet would break apart as it did. However, he did not believe that a pair of bracelets could predetermine their fate. Besides, he already had a plan. In a few days, he would pay her a visit to her and bring her some wine. He knew how much she liked the sour plum wine, so he personally made a few gallons of it. He was certain that the taste was guaranteed to be the finest. She would definitely like it. By offering Gu Shijio her favorite food and wine, he believed that the compensation would be enough for him to ask for her forgiveness. Even if she refused to forgive him at first, the two of them were immortals, so he still had a long time to deal with the problem. If she liked to eat, he would bring her to all 6 worlds in search of the finest food. He knew that there were some restaurants with excellent delicacies that she had yet to try. The scorching sun continued to burn in the desert, so it did not take long for Di Fui to work up a sweat. He made a thorough examination of his body and found out that his blood circulation was generally fine without the slightest obstruction. The only noteworthy change was a decrease in his spiritual power, but it was only mildly affected, almost negligible. He heaved a sigh as he was relieved that the catastrophic lightning did not pose any real harm to its victims. After all, the pain was actually tolerable. Furthermore, his spiritual power was lower than hers, so if he could handle the aftermath with ease, so could she. Di Fui's analytical skill was never wrong, but no amount of evidence could calm his raging and restless heart. It was like an important part of his life was about to come to an end. There were urgent matters that he should attend to, but he could no longer concentrate. He needed to see her. He wanted to see her, even if only from afar. He needed to be sure that she was fine. However, her teleportation skill left no traces of where she went. There was no way he could simply follow her footprints to find her. After a brief pause, he decided to ride on a cloud and search the area within a 100-mile radius. He had to stay focused and look for her, even though he was thoroughly exhausted. Chapter 2938, The Dissolution of Their Discipleship. 6. The deserted territory remained untraversed, and the silent hills remained static. There was no sign of Gu Shijio within 100 miles of the place they had met earlier. Obviously, she was no longer in the area. Where would she go? Once again, Di Fui stepped foot into the Tianyin Valley, a place where he had avoided for more than 2 years. The servants in the Tianyin Valley carried out their respective chores as usual. All of them were kept occupied. "National Master, what brings you here?" A servant was surprised to find him in the valley. Di Fui went straight to the point and asked, "Has the Divine Lord returned?" The servant answered with a shake of his head. "No, she has been out for more than 20 days now and has yet to return to her residence." Apparently, she had not returned. Somehow, Di Fui seemed relieved. "When the Divine Lord comes back from her travels, please notify me at once. I have something of grave importance to discuss with her. Not a moment of delay is allowed." He then handed over a directed audio amulet to the servant. The servant was unsure of the reason behind the National Master's urgency, but he knew how much the Divine Lord cared for the man. No one was allowed to say anything disrespectful against the National Master, so he knew he had to reflect the same amount of respect that the Divine Lord had for him. Once the servant accepted the device, Di Fui turned and left. He wanted to go to the glacier first, but the thought of his abandoned residence reminded him of his priorities. Swiftly, he made a quick turn and headed in a different direction. The gallons of fine wine that he intended to give to Gu Shijio were all stored in the abandoned residence. He had to dig into the ground to uncover the big jars of wine that were left underground for fermentation. The tantalizing fragrance of the wine had filled the air. It seemed that the underground fermentation had certainly worked some magic in the wine. Di Fui knew that there was no way she could resist the temptation of such finely made wine. Also, he guessed that if she had not returned to the Tianyin Valley, she must have visited the glacier to restore her spiritual power. Knowing her, these were the only 2 places that she would go to if she needed to recover. He would surely find her in either place. Back at the glacier, The whole place was buried in a layer of thick, white snow. Difui went straight to the ice cabin to look for Gu Shijio. The igloo still stood in solidarity against the vast white snow in the vicinity. None of the furniture in the cabin had changed or been moved, and Gu Shijio was nowhere to be seen. Disappointed, he took a look around the cabin to check if there were any traces of her left behind. From what he discovered, she must have visited the place at least 3 times in the past 2 years. Each visit would have been for about 2 weeks. To his surprise, she did not make her way here this time. Was she still on her way? Or did she need to recover elsewhere because of the nature of the injury? He found 2 scrunched balls of paper in one of the corners of the cabin and opened them. Although it was messy, he could tell at once that it was Gu Zijia's handwriting. It looked like she wrote the words out of boredom, as some of the content did not make much sense. If only he waited for an hour more, things would be fine. Maybe we were never meant to be. I'm not feeling well. My heart aches a little. He has not been here for 2 months now. Not even once. Perhaps he will never come. Although his culinary skills are far from impressive, his ability to make wine was undoubtedly amazing. I wonder if we'll have another drink together. Difui could feel his fingers going numb and noticed that his fingertips had turned whitish. Although there were no names mentioned, he knew very well that he was the one she was writing about. Apparently, she was not completely emotionless. After all, perhaps she had visited the glacier so frequently over the past 2 years just to see him. Nevertheless, he did not quite understand what she meant by if he only waited for an hour more. He straightened up the other piece of paper and started reading its contents too. His face went pale almost instantaneously. He was so shocked that he could not even stand up straight. He read the scribbles that were on the second piece of paper and almost sank to the ground. I do not have much time. There is only half a month left. I want to live my life in my last days. I will not keep worrying about Fan Qianshi anymore. I want to taste all the good food in the world and have no regrets. I am still craving for the wine that he made. Actually, I am a little scared. Difui's hand started trembling uncontrollably. From the traces of the ink, he could tell that the message was written about half a month ago. Chapter 2939, The Fall of a Deity in His Chaotic Mind. Flashes of memory started to play and rewind. Why should we end it? I promise that I will never tell anyone or control you in any way. If we insist on carrying out the dissolution, both of us would be punished by the catastrophic thunderbolts. What if I don't make it? Difui, what a coincidence. We meet again. Shall we have a drink? Let's have a drink. Do you have any wine? I think we should have a drink to mark the farewell. What if I died from the catastrophic lightning? I will never be able to drink again. Her words continued to echo in his head. In an instant, his mind was overwhelmed by all of the memories of her. He had not forgotten anything that she said. And now, everything finally made sense. All of a sudden, he was reminded about the recent reports he received regarding her whereabouts. Master, the Divine Lord has been spending her time traveling the world, mostly in restaurants and bars. She will always order all of the signature dishes, but only to take a few bites. In a rush to find her, Difui tripped over a stone and almost found himself tumbling into the snow. He staggered a little before ultimately finding his balance again. Fear and anxiety had completely taken over his state of mind, but he had to find her. Agio, you have to wait for me. You are not allowed to leave. Oh God, why are these flowers withering? What is happening? It is only June, and yet the leaves are already turning brown. Hey guys, have a look at the lake. It is drying up. Where did the water go? The lake has never dried up before. Such strong winds. Run, run. My goodness, has God been infuriated? It is raining, raining. Oh God, why is it raining blood? The world had turned into a state of complete chaos. Visit website, our list novel. Calm, strong winds continued to ravage the surface, howling eerily like cries of grudging spirits. All of the streams dried out to the point where even the bottom of the dried lake started to crack. Clouds filled the sky, obscuring the sun from reaching the surface. In the stinging rain, streams of red water came down in a splash. It was as if the sky was crying tears of blood. As soon as Di Fui emerged from the glacier, he noticed these unusual happenings that immediately puzzled him. People were running for their life. Some were crying for help. Others were hiding in vaults. Basically, all of them were equally disturbed and puzzled, not sure of what was actually happening. Apart from their bafflement, they were also moved by a sudden urge to cry, like an uncontrollable expression of grief that was driving them to tears. Master, it is looking bad. The Atlas Mountains of the Celestial Kingdom is falling apart. Master, I am unsure why the Devil Kingdom is now raining meteorites. Many lives are at stake. Master, it does not look good. A massive earthquake struck the Monster Kingdom, tearing the rivers apart. Even the ground is falling apart, too. Master, the beasts of the animal kingdom are all howling in unison. Master, the human world. Many reports came in simultaneously from all over the place. Strange happenings had taken over the 6 worlds at the same time. His men were trained to be calm, but for the first time, their voices were clearly trembling, and it sounded like they were already in tears. A wave of great sorrow had taken over every living soul's heart. It felt like the end of the world. Di Fui could no longer keep a clear mind, and his legs went weak like jellies. Due to the stinging rain, no one was out in the streets. Everyone was taking shelter in their homes. Therefore, Di Fui was the only one running around in a frenzy under the rain, looking like an idiot. Unfortunately, no one knew where the location of the god of creation, so he did not know where he could find her. Chapter 2940, The Fall of a Deity. 2. The only means of communication that they shared was the directed audio amulet that he, unfortunately, destroyed with his own hands. Ajia, where are you? Where did you go? Suddenly, he was reminded of a place where he might be able to find her. Without wasting any time, he dashed off in that direction. Di Fui was headed to the forbidden land of God, which did not belong to any of the 6 worlds. The sky was now a dark tint of royal blue. Meanwhile, a grand hall of primitive simplicity was loosely hung in midair like magic. From the top of the hall, it felt so close to heaven that one could be drawn to reach for the stars above. Clouds lingered underneath Guzijia's feet in the Jade Hall. The entire place shone with vibrance and was absolutely scenic. Even Gu Shijio found the place to be magnificent, and it just so happens to be where she was born. It was also here that she awoke from her deep, long slumber. She remembered stepping out of the place right when she woke up. Although the place offered spectacular scenery, she was quite reluctant to come by. The place was dead silent, which was nothing like the lively world out there. There was no sound at all, not even the breeze. It was as if time stood still here. Yet, the ominous silence was depressing, as it made Gu Shijio feel like it was the end of the world. She liked to be in crowded places and was always fond of the city noises, which was why she loathed the stillness of the place. If she had the choice, she would not choose to return to this place. However, there she was again, back to point zero, where everything started. She did not have much time to spare. She had to make it to the top of the hall before her immortalization. The array formation was already well set, so she could channel her final strength as a mighty god to support the foundation of all 6 worlds. The star formation was the key to everything. Therefore, hastily, she found her way to the edge of the formation and sighed as she gazed upon the brightest star in the middle. The people of the 6 worlds often thought that she refused to be involved in the affairs of the world. They only saw her as a carefree woman traveling from one place to another. No one knew that she was actually the lifeblood of the 6 worlds. She was the reason that life existed in a flourishing and prosperous panorama. Once she was immortalized, the very foundation of the 6 worlds would certainly be greatly affected. Natural disasters were only the beginning, and things would get worse. The entire world might even collapse altogether. Therefore, she needed to enter the array formation before her immortalization struck. The formation would absorb her strength as a god and channel the power back to the 6 worlds to keep things stable. All the while, she was trying to buy some time until the next creator of the universe took over. Her soul as a god would eventually become the very essence that supported all the lives in the six worlds. So, after her death, she would not be reincarnated ever again. The stars sparkled like diamonds as she walked barefooted to the approach the top. There was a stinging pain in her every step with blood left behind on each star. Her footprint would instantly blossom into a blood-red lotus flower that would then wither away. From afar, the starry night sky seemed to be decorated with blood-red lotus flowers that looked beautiful yet were absolutely deadly. With the progress gained from every step, she finally made it to the center, where there was a lotus altar. Faintly, lights glowed from within the base, as if gracing her presence. She slowly traced the altar with her eyes closed and heaved a sigh. Alas, everything must come to an end. The creator of the universe was always known to be strong and almighty. All beings highly appreciated her compassionate and loving character. However, they often forgot that deep down, she was actually just a girl too. She came into the world all alone, and now she had to leave alone too. She was actually scared. In fact, she wished that someone was here to walk her through the last moments of her life. However, she had no other choice but to lead a solitary life. She looked around while tracing her chapped lips and gazed out at the distant stars and noticed that the place was entirely devoid of wind. Although the surrounding temperature was nothing extreme, all she could feel was piercing cold. Even without any examination, she could tell that her bodily systems were slowly shutting down. As her strength slowly faded from her body, every inch of her veins slowly turned into ice. It was so cold. If only there was someone here to give her a warm hug for the very last time. All of a sudden, she thought about the brief embrace that they shared in the glacier. It was a warm and solid hug. She could still remember the faint scent that immersed her nostrils. The way he smiled at her was full of tenderness and affection. Chapter 2941, The Fall of a Deity. 3. Her heart ached at the thought of her fondest memory. Gently, a warm droplet of water dripped from her cheek on to the back of her hand. She stared at the droplet of water blankly and was surprised that she was actually tearing up. Gu Zijia's sudden, heartfelt emotion of pain and regret was nothing like what she had experienced before. It was as if a knife had been stabbed into her heart from before, but was being twisted around. She had never experienced it before in her life. The catastrophic thunderbolts from before had almost killed her. However, it seemed that her survival was, in turn, rewarded with the awakening of her emotions. Unfortunately, pain and torments were all that she could feel, and she became overwhelmed with great distress. Di Fui, you and I were never destined to be together, after all. Gu Shijio closed her eyes to process her sorrow. Meanwhile, she started to experience frequent loss of consciousness, while her body slowly became frozen. She could no longer suppress the overflow of her power, and even some of her soul. Her eyelashes were already frozen into ice at this point, and so was her body. Slowly, she was losing all of her senses. Her circulation had completely shut down, while her power continued to drain from her body. Eventually, she would not be able to feel anything and fall into an eternity of darkness. It was finally time. She took her last breath and managed to make her way onto the altar. Her robes started to dance around as if pushed by an invisible force. With one last look, her eyes lingered on the sixth world for the very last time as she let out a bitter smile on her face. Gu Shijio certainly loved the world that she created, and now she was ready to die for it. With her eyes closed, the array formation became activated, and Gu Shijio found herself encapsulated in a streak of seven-colored ray. The seven-colored jade door was slightly ajar, and the strong currents of power from within the hall started to overflow, thus pushing anyone standing 100 meters from it. The crane boy who stayed to guard the place had to stay away by hiding behind a big rock. All of a sudden, Di Fui grasped him by his wings and demanded, "Is she in there?" The boy tried to maintain his composure, but his voice was obviously trembling. The Divine Lord. She was the one who opened the door and entered the place. Difui swiftly pushed the boy away and rushed towards the entrance, but the boy, unfortunately, hindered his attempt. National Master, only the Divine Lord is allowed to enter the place. No one else is permitted, or you will be turned into dust. Also, the door will only be open for half an hour each time. When time is up, the door will automatically be sealed and can only be reopened a month later. The door has been left open for more than 3/4 of that time now. Soon, it will be sealed, leaving you no way out. You cannot risk going in right now. Would I really turn into dust if I insisted on going in? Fan Qianshi went in there once, and look how good he is doing right now. The boy explained, Mr. Qianshi is no ordinary man. He is the disciple of the creator of the universe. The Divine Lord told me that as soon as Mr. Qianshi hatches the mystical candle dragon, he can come and go as he pleases, provided that his spiritual power is at level 8 of a great deity. By that time, I need not stop him from going into the Forbidden Land anymore. By the way, it was Mr. Qianshi who forcefully made his way into the place. He was lucky that the Divine Lord made her way here in time to take him out. Otherwise, he would be long dead. You have no idea how dangerous it was for them. As soon as the Divine Lord sent him out, the door was immediately sealed. Her robes were almost stuck in the door. As a result, the Divine Lord was injured, and so was Mr. Qianshi. His skin was thoroughly burnt due to the exposure, and his wound was a rather eerie sight. Difui remained silent. The boy added, The Divine Lord looked strange, though. She was wearing a red bridal dress. Hastily, she came and left the place immediately after reprimanding Mr. Qianshi for his recklessness. She teleported right away like she was trying to make it back to her wedding. In fact, I was the one who treated Mr. Qianshi's wound. Chapter 2942, The Fall of a Deity, 4 sponsored content. In that brief exchange, everything finally fell into place for Difui. He knew what she meant on the scrunched paper. If only he waited an hour more. She must have been eager to explain to him about her hasty departure from the wedding. She tried contacting him via the directed audio spell that they shared and tried to tell his men. She even tried to collect information about his whereabouts. She just wanted to see him again. However, he never gave her a chance. Adieu. The boy was surprised to see National Master D tearing up in public for the first time. He stared blankly at the door, seemingly preoccupied. Time was almost up, and the door could be seen closing bit by bit. The boy seemed relieved as he announced, Time is almost up, and the door will be sealed soon. I will open it again in a month. But before he finished speaking, he was caught by surprise. A moment ago, National Master D was somewhat unresponsive to what the guard had been telling him. However, in a brief moment, he suddenly dashed through the door before it was completely sealed, leaving the boy in bewilderment. Download our sponsor's game and get $30 reward. Remove ads? Difui found himself running through the forbidden land of God. He tried to sense his surroundings and knew for certain that Gu Shijio should be right ahead of him. As he rushed forward toward Gu Shijio, he had not paid any attention to the scenic night view around him or even wondered why he was not injured or attacked by a fierce creature yet. Fortunately, there was no disruption along the way. There was only one thought on his mind. Wait for me, Agio. You have to wait for me. If he could still feel her presence, it could mean that she was not immortalized yet. There was hope. Perhaps she was severely injured and needed to rehabilitate. Maybe she would just fall into another long slumber, just like the days when she was dormant. A god was supposed to be immortal. How could she become immortalized? He tried to convince himself that he must have mistaken her messages. Download our sponsor's game and get $30 reward. Remove ads? A god would only fall into a dormant state, but should not die. When she said about running out of time, maybe she meant that she was expecting another long slumber and that the next awakening might be many, many years later. Regardless, he wanted to stay by her side until she woke up and would never let her go again. People only thought about her as a supreme being, but Difui knew that, deep down, she was also a little girl who was always craving for food and sleep. A normal girl who was afraid of being alone. He had seen all of her soft spots and weaknesses. He was reminded of the look she gave him when she asked for one more drink together in the desert. She looked like a child who was about to be abandoned. He honestly thought that she was playing tricks with him again, so her appeal was answered with an ice-cold rejection. She must have been feeling really sad at that moment. How could he be so cruel to her? Difui closed his eyes in utter remorse as the pain in his heart almost choked him. Agio, download our sponsor's game and get $30 reward. Remove ads? I know my mistake. Please forgive me, will you? You have to wait for me. All of a sudden, something caught his attention, so he looked up and saw the grand hall that was hovering in the sky, not too far away. The place was overwhelmed with streaks of seven-colored rays, while the night sky was glowing with utmost brilliance. She was there. He finally found her. Nervously, his legs started to grow soft to the point where he found it difficult to keep his balance. Nevertheless, he tried to keep his composure and stay focused. With a leap, he went straight to the top of the hall. Download our sponsor's game and get $30 reward. Remove ads? From his current vantage point, the night sky was gorgeous with billions of stars. Being on top of the hall immediately exposed him to the boundless void of the universe. The path that led him to the lotus altar was paved with blood-red lotus flowers that made it look like a somewhat dreamlike scene, a beautiful place of utter dreariness. He gazed into the boundless horizon and was immediately captivated by a sense of desolation. She was sitting right there on the lotus altar. Her delicate face had turned icy cold, and her aura no longer carried the same liveliness that it used to possess. Her hands were pinched together for a spell, but it was in a rather unusual manner. Faint lights could be seen exiting her body and slowly entering the surrounding circle of seven-colored rays in front of her. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2943, The Fall of a Deity. 5 streaks of faint light were being channeled away from her body slowly and became immersed in the surrounding seven-colored ray. The aura of the creator of the universe was in abundance, filling the starry sky with her purest power. The stars continued to shine in dazzling glitters above, but the brighter the starlight, the weaker her breathing became. Difui's heart sank into an abyss of hopelessness all of a sudden. In a desperate attempt to keep her back, he rushed forward to get to her, but was immediately obstructed by a mysterious force. He wanted to wake her up from her stillness, but was nowhere near enough or due to the hindrance. Trembling, he tried to keep his hands steady to perform a few spells. However, none of them worked. The array formation surrounding her was built with strong defenses, thus blocking his entry. Within the circle, her breathing gradually became weaker to the point that it was almost unnoticeable. Even from afar, he could already how ashen her face had become. Her cherry lips had lost all its colors, and he could see that there was a layer of ice around her eyes and eyelashes. Afraid of losing her, he started to experience waves of anxiety rushing throughout his body. Agio, please don't do anything silly. Come out here to me. He ceaselessly tried everything he could to break the barrier. Come out here. See what I have brought you. Your favorite sour plum wine. Even though he was trying to shout as loud as he could tell that he could not speak clearly because of the agonizing pain he was experiencing. This is the best that I have made so far. You have yet to taste it. Please, will you please come out? These bottles of wine are all yours. I shall drink with you, as much and as long as you want. She once told him very proudly that she had a sensitive nose for wine. In fact, nothing could stop her from getting to a good bottle of wine. With only a sniff, she could locate any good wines within miles of her location. In a desperate attempt to catch her attention, he smashed a few bottles of wine on the ground to infuse the air with its sweet scent. In the past, she would rush to him and address her utmost disapproval. However, to his dismay, she was still on the lotus altar and did not react at all. Meanwhile, her power was still flowing away in a continuous stream. The temperature started to drop even further, but she seemed unbothered. In stillness, she sat like a statue that was devoid of any sign of life. Difui was aware that Gushijio was not someone who was generally accustomed to the cold. Even the slightest drop in temperature would immediately prompt her to seek warmth. He wished he could be there by her side to warm her up when she needed it most. All alone, she sat in the ice-cold array formation. Even though Difui could see her, he felt as though they were miles apart. It would seem that she was unreachable. He stood on the edge of the star formation, helpless, watching as his spells were unfortunately bounced off by the mysterious force. He kept his eyes on her all the time and noticed, bit by bit, that her body started to turn transparent. Instantly, she became barely visible as the surrounding streaks of 7-colored rays shone brighter. Under the intense light, it looked as though she would vanish into thin air at any time. The feeling was too surreal. Her life was coming to an end, and the realization shook Difui to his core. His mind was completely blank, and he could hardly breathe. Desperately, he tried everything he could to break into the wizardry barrier, but all of his attempts were in vain. Agio! Agio! Let me in, will you? Let me in! Apparently, she could no longer hear him, so none of his cries were heard. He had been tirelessly shouting her name to get her attention, but she remained completely still. After losing all of her senses, it was only a matter of time before she would disintegrate into dust. He would never be able to find her again. Realization dawned upon Difui all of a sudden, thus shattering his faith completely. In despair, he tried everything that he could to get into the wizardry barrier. Chapter 2944. The Fall of a Deity. 6. In despair, he tried everything that he could to break the wizardry barrier. His voice trembled with fear and panic as he continued to call out to her desperately. If only he could break into the wizardry barrier. He needed to get to her to give her a warm hug and possibly convince her to stay. She must be feeling very cold now, so a long, warm hug was very much needed. She also said that she was scared. That would mean that she needed him to be by her side. Thoughts exploded in his head and wreaked havoc in his chest. It would seem that fear had swallowed him whole, but in his desperation, he seemed to have provoked the awakening of a hidden force in his body. A sudden thought flashed in his mind and gave him a brief idea of how to break the wizardry barrier. Without any delay, he began to perform a spell. He bit his index finger to allow blood to start oozing out as he began reciting some complicated incantations with blood on his finger. After that, he placed his palm on the seemingly indestructible wizardry barrier and surprisingly was able to make a small hole. Although the opening was small, the newfound sense of hope was tremendous. He eagerly tried to tear the hole to form a wider opening. Nevertheless, the very edges of the opening seemed to be saber-toothed. As soon as he touched it, it felt like sharp teeth were sunk deeply into his skin. Blood was dripped all over his hands, but he could not care less about the physical pain. Determined, he screamed at the top of his voice and went full force into breaking it without holding back. Bang! The whole wizardry barrier was shattered. Difui made his way in hastily. In an instant, the entire lotus altar became vividly lit, brightening up the starry sky with dazzling streaks of light. He finally saw her up close and noticed that she looked the same, albeit with less visibility. Her eyelashes were invisible, making her look like an exquisitely crafted crystal statue. Furthermore, after a distinct sound of shattering glass, she became entirely invisible. Piece by piece, she dispersed into streaks of light and was spread into the vast sky. She no longer existed. Agio! Difui cried out loud at the top of his voice, blowing the surrounding clouds away by the powerful force. He reached out to the fragments of light, but he knew that he would never be able to collect the pieces back into one. He could not believe it. She had yet to taste the finest wine that he had made for her. She had yet to see his set of wedding robes. She never knew that he had also made her a customized wedding gown for their real wedding. She did not know that the coincidence by the hill was entirely made up. He asked his servant to pretend to be the little princess. She was not told that she was the only one that he had ever loved. There was never anyone else. The only reason that he insisted on the dissolution of their discipleship was so that he could officially pursue her as a man would. He already made a comprehensive plan for it. She must have thought that he hated her as she spent her last days in solitary. Although she was the creator of the universe, like everyone else, she was afraid of the cold, of hunger, and of death. She had written her feelings on the scrunched-up paper. He wanted to be with her. In fact, he held that he had sent her to her death. So it was his responsibility to do something about it. Agio, it must be a lonely path in the afterlife. What if I come with you? He whispered softly. Soon, he raised his palm to gather a striking source of 7-colored rays over his head. Eyes closed, he then aimed the light toward his head in a suicide attempt. All of a sudden, a gentle gust of wind blew by. A tantalizing scent wafted with the breeze, reminding him of someone he used to know. Instantly, he opened his eyes and chased after the wind, rather intuitively. As soon as he touched a wisp of wind, his whole body was lit up. Pieces of memories started flooding into his mind involuntarily. He finally remembered that he was the master of the heavenly law. He recalled a little girl who was always by his side in his past life. She was supposed to have died, but he turned her fate around and surrendered himself instead. Chapter 2945, The Fall of a Deity, 7. Fortunately, one piece of his soul remained, so he was reincarnated, and their paths crossed again. He died for her the last time. This time around, her life ended early because of him. It seemed that one could not get what was denied by destiny. He looked at the vast starlit sky and started contemplating. After a while, he started performing a series of spells. Swirls of 7-colored rays began to surround him, sweeping his robes in the gusts of wind. He made some movements, and the stars were rearranged accordingly, like chess pieces on a board. At that moment, it seemed that a wisp of wind that he captured from before was encapsulated by a streak of 7-colored rays and flashed into the dark sky before disappearing entirely. The series of spells that he cast was obviously very physically demanding. He was already looking pale at that point. Agio, after my tragic immortalization, I have spent thousands of years collecting pieces of my broken soul to become a whole again. You can do it, too. I will find you, no matter where you are. I hope we can both be free from the entanglement of our responsibilities. You will no longer be the creator of the universe, and I shall not be the master of heavenly law. The starlit sky was endless, but it did not stop him from waving his sleeves to redirect the light of as many stars as he could into a swirl and sent the streak of light right out into the boundless void. The forbidden land of God used to be a very private place. Only a few people knew about it in all 6 worlds. The place was widely popularized due to an accidental encounter when Di Fui passed by the place about a year ago. He noticed that the clouds around the place seemed rather odd. He followed his instincts and entered the place, only to realize that it was more than what it seemed to be. There was a tall gate made entirely of emerald jade, with a sign that said, "The Forbidden Land of God." A gate made of jade was sealed, and 2 creatures were assigned to guard the door. They carried the appearance of humans, which were actually their evolved figure. In fact, they were both actually crane-like creatures. From the children, he found out a little bit about the place. It was the birthplace of the god of creation, and the entire place was filled with many dangers to stop people from breaking in. If the violator insisted, he or she would be doomed by a series of strange disasters. Upon learning about the information, Di Fui had an immediate aversion to the place and decided to leave. However, before he went away, the 2 crane boys stopped him and made an insane request to erase his memory about the place, claiming that it was a required procedure. The end result was that the 2 creatures reverted to their former forms as cranes, as Di Fui thought that they needed a lesson. He was very against the idea of having his memory erased by someone else. In another coincidence, Tu Shan-ing once went into the place as well and was pursued by the cranes. Driven by frustration, she managed to make one of them surrender to her and took him back. She fed the crane with a miraculous elixir and gave it some additional herbs. Surprisingly, the crane managed to transform into its human form again. The boy had rarely come across others of its kind. Getting into the monster kingdom was like a dream come true for him. He befriended many and became less cautious about what to say and what not to say. That was how more and more people got to know about the forbidden land of God. Therefore, the secret became widespread among members of all 6 worlds. Anyone with a certain degree of social status knew about the place. Aroused by curiosity, people started to swarm to the place to find out about its secret, but none were able to make it in. As soon as they approached the magnificent jade door, their bodies started to ache, and those who insisted on venturing were all turned into dust. As the death toll rose, many started to fear for their safety. Over time, the place returned to its usual serenity. Today, the place was filled with curious crowds again. Utterly worried, the oddities around the 6 worlds had prompted the people to relate the incidents back to the creator of the universe. All the rulers from each kingdom paid a visit to the Tianyin Valley right away, but were surprised by the absence of the wizardry barrier that used to secure the place. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi frantically rushed out from the valley, all the way to the forbidden land of God. Chapter 2946. The Fall of a Deity. 8. Baffled, the leaders of each kingdom followed Fan Qianshi toward the forbidden land of God. When they arrived, the jade door was sealed. Additionally, instead of guarding the entrance, the crane boy was seen shivering in a corner. Desperately, Fan Qianshi lifted the boy and started questioning him. "Where is my master?" The crane boy was about to cry at any second. The Divine Lord had made her way in. She did not look well and was staggered as she walked in. She had forcefully opened up the door and went right in. I did not dare to stop her. Not long after that, National Master D arrived as well. He went into the place before the door was sealed. I could not stop him either, so I informed you about it. I kept hearing weird noises from the inside. It was quite alarming. The crane boy was quite incoherent in the delivery of his message, but they got his point. The crowd looked at one another in consternation. The Emperor Immortal frowned and continued to question the boy. Only the creator of the universe is allowed to enter the place, right? If no one else was permitted to enter, how did National Master D make his way in? The boy shook his head helplessly, for he was equally baffled. Someone suddenly added, "Could National Master D be one of the creators of the universe as well? I was told that there was more than one creator in ancient times." "Nonsense. There is only one God of creation. My master is the only one. Who do you think Di is? Is he even worthy?" Fan Qianshi raised his voice to put an end to the young immortal's wild speculation. Consequently, all the rulers were quite offended by the harsh remark. To them, Di was their leader, so any disapproval against him would naturally be offensive. They wanted to argue back, but were stopped by the deadly look in Fan Qianshi's bloodshot eyes. All they knew now was that 2 very important people were inside, and the weird noises did not seem to stop. They decided to wait outside the door for the final outcome, as there was nothing else that they could do for the time being. Meanwhile, the rulers were still in touch with their men in the respective kingdoms. They all shared the same observations. As soon as the creator of the universe entered the forbidden land, the scale of the catastrophic disasters became very much toned down. The rain of blood was less violent, and the earthquakes came to a stop. Water started to flow and nourish the dried, cracked lakes. Were there creatures in the forbidden land of God, the ones who were causing the trouble? Did the creator of the universe go in there to take care of it? They all knew that the door would remain sealed for another month, so the rulers decided to camp there and prepare for a month-long wait. There was nothing they could do in their respective kingdoms anyway. Might as well camp here and wait for the latest information. Also, it was a chance for them to display their loyalty to the creator of the universe and the master of the 6 worlds. Everyone stayed calm and composed, except Fan Qianshi. He was either in deep thought or desperately tried to push his way through the door. At first, they tried to talk him out of the foolish attempt. However, He did not care to listen to any of it, so they decided to just let him be. There was nothing he could change, anyway. Generally, the impression that the people had about Fan Qianshi was rather complicated. 2 years ago, he ruined the wedding between the Divine Lord and Di Fui. In relation to that, his inappropriate affection for his master was no longer a secret. His master's utter disapproval of his feelings was widely known as well. For the past 2 years, he had been living a secluded life. His presence in public would always stir up unwanted attention. People often compared him to Di Fui, but Fan Qianshi was never the favorable one. What he had done to his master was frowned upon, and his feelings for her were compared to a hideous toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Of course, Fan Qianshi was not aware of these gossips. He was, nonetheless, aware of the general attitude that people had toward him. Usually, he did not care about these people and what they thought of him. However, the long wait was starting to get boring, so the people needed something to talk about. Needless to say, he became the subject of much local gossip. Chapter 2947, The Fall of a Deity. 9. These people gossiped very softly, and most of them even used directed audio messages. Little did they know that Fan Qianshi was gifted with an excellent hearing. Now that his spiritual power was already at the level of a great deity, his hearing became incredibly sensitive, much more powerful than any ordinary being. He could even hear conversations that took place 100 meters away from him. This man is so overrated. He even used his feelings to manipulate his master by attempting to kill himself. Otherwise, the union between the Divine Lord and National Master Di would not have been ruined. The Divine Lord has not been treating him quite the same in the past 2 years. I heard that the Divine Lord even tried to expel him. However, she would not have anyone to take over her role. The Divine Lord is the creator of the universe, a figure of immortality. She doesn't need to look for someone to keep her legacy going. However, if she were looking for a successor, it would be National Master Di. I heard that the Divine Lord has been following him for 2 years now. I agree with you. The forbidden land of God only allows the creator of the universe to enter. Others are never permitted to get inside, regardless of their power or status. We cannot even get close, but National Master Di is in there as we speak. Obviously, the creator of the universe has taught him something we do not know. Perhaps she has already appointed him as her successor, which explains why he could enter so easily. Brother, you have a point. In this case, Mr. Qianshi seems quite pathetic. Maybe he will always only be known as a disciple of the creator of the universe and nothing more. The contents of their conversation were not exactly pleasing to Fan Qianshi's ears. Irritated, he stared fixedly at the jade door with a wrathful spark in his eyes while clenching his fists. Master, why did you let Di Fui into the forbidden land of God? Master, I am your disciple, and Di Fui is nothing. He cannot simply emerge as your successor. Master, I do not want anything more but to be by your side for as long as I can. I only want to be your disciple. Master, you cannot take away my last hope. Master, please come out and let them know that you care about me. Clarify the situation to them. How did Di Fui enter the forbidden land of God? What could be the reasons if he emerged from within, unharmed? Many questions started to pop out in his head. The more he thought about the doubts, the more insecure he became. Suddenly, he was reminded of the candle dragon's egg that was given to him a couple of days ago. His master had not given up on him, apparently. The gesture gave him a clear sense of hope. With that, he took a deep breath and started to think aloud. Master will surely be fine. She will definitely make it out, he said to himself and the crowd. He then turned to the jade door and continued his soft utterance. Master, the candle dragon's egg that you gave to me is about to hatch. I will show it to you when you come out. The crowd looked at him in disbelief. A candle dragon's egg that was about to hatch? The Divine Lord had given her disciple a candle dragon's egg. The remarkable gift would be a clear sign that she cared for him. All of a sudden, the crowd broke down in tears amidst their discussions. Everyone was hit by a sudden wave of sadness and grief as tears started to roll in their eyes without any apparent reasons. Soon, everyone was crying. What was going on? They stared at each other helplessly, unsure why they were all crying at the same time. Chapter 2948. The Fall of a Deity. 10. At the same time, a streak of 7-colored rays emerged from behind the jade door and flew up straight into the sky. The crowd was bewildered, completely blown away by the series of strange happenings. However, it did not take long for the members of the 6 worlds to report to their rulers. "Your Highness, the plants are coming back to life. Leaves start to grow again on the bald trees. Even the flowers are blossoming. My king, the blood rain has just stopped. The sun is out. My emperor, the lakes are filled with water again. How magical!" Reports kept pouring in from everywhere. Those were all good news, but the messengers did not make the news sound good at all. They were sobbing while communicating the information. Both the callers and receivers were crying, but neither of them understood why. Tushan, the more knowledgeable among the rulers, spoke. It seems to me like the death of a god has taken place." The crowd was utterly stunned. When a god dies, all living souls will involuntarily weep. Flowers die, mountains collapse, rivers dry up, even the heavens shed tears of blood. Tushan spoke calmly. Nevertheless, the crowd was quick to refute her statement. "As the ruler of the monster kingdom, you should stop spreading ominous reports. When these signs were happening, the Divine Lord was on her way into the forbidden land of God. The crane boy saw her." "That is right. Moreover, these signs have disappeared. The 6 worlds are stable now." "I'm not done yet." Frustrated, she continued to speak. "When a god dies, her body fades into wisps of wind. In return, the calamities from before will be mended, and the 6 worlds will thrive. In memory of the mighty God, we all weep in her absence." The crowd found her reasoning to be unacceptable. Her statements angered Fan Qianshi. Infuriated, he launched a strike at Tushan. "Nonsense! What are you talking about? How can a god ever die? My master will never die. How dare you curse my master with death?" He channeled all of his strength into that one strike. And since his spiritual power was already at level 7 of a great deity, he was practically unbeatable. In recent years, he spent a large amount of time around Gushijio and would hardly show his face in public. He had also concealed his power, so no one knew how great he had become. Their last impression of him was 2.5 years ago, where he appeared to be a mess. Therefore, they underestimated him. All the kings and leaders had sworn their loyalty to Di Fui, so naturally, they treated Fan Qianshi like he was nobody. They still thought that Fan Qianshi was only a young, inexperienced adult without any power, so they went on and gossiped about him without any restraints, even in his presence. They had no respect for a man who only domineered over others, all in the name of his master. To their utter disbelief, his kung fu was remarkable. Tushan was so severely injured that she almost returned to her original form. Her servants were attacked as well once they realized that their ruler was in danger. She had to utilize all her knowledge of kung fu just to defend herself. None of them saw it coming. They gasped aghast at his power. The forces of the remaining 5 kingdoms decided to fall back to keep their leaders safe. Nonetheless, some were desperate to seek vengeance for what Tushan had suffered. The emperor of the human world condemned the lethal act. He was close with Tushan, so he had to take a stand on her behalf by expressing his complete disapproval of Fan Qianshi's impetuous act. Eloquently, he was able to express his criticism through reasoning. He said, "Mr. Qianshi, you have been so reckless. The Tushan family belongs to one of our most ancient species. Chapter 2949, The Fall of a Deity. 11. He said, "Mr. Qianshi, you have been so reckless. The Tushan family belongs to one of our most ancient species. There are legends and literature that have been passed down from generation to generation in her family, which remain unknown to outsiders. Also, the nine-tailed fox is gifted with an eye to foresee the future. Tushan carries the blood of her family, so it is not surprising that she knows more than us. She was worried about the God of creation, and seeing the oddity prompted her to share the story with us. She meant no harm, but you chose to deal with it so ruthlessly. Isn't it rude and inappropriate? That is right. We are all worried about the God of creation. How could a few inauspicious words do any harm to the Divine Lord at all? Mr. Qianshi, you are overreacting. Your recklessness has abased yourself as the disciple of the creator of the universe. True, Mr. Qianshi was too impetuous. He did not behave like the disciple of the creator of a universe at all. His impulsive behavior must have caused him to become the least favorite person in the eyes of the Divine Lord. Sounds like it. See, if the creator of the universe knew that she was dying, she would have met up with Mr. Qianshi to discuss his succession. Apparently, she did not tell him anything. Of course, she did not tell him anything. The Divine Lord dislikes him, for sure. She must be regretting her decision of taking him as her disciple. Let me remind you that National Master D is in there as we speak. The Divine Lord is probably discussing with him about the succession of her role and all of her power. There were hundreds of people present, each with their own opinion. Even as a child, his arrogant character had offended many people before he became a disciple of the Divine Lord. The people only chose to treat him respectfully because they respected the Divine Lord. At present, no one knew if the God of creation was still alive. There was a chance that she was already gone, so there was less reason for them to continue paying him any respect. His impetuous act earlier had resulted in a massive wave of criticism. The remarks of the people were clearly hurtful and unforgiving. Trembling in agony, Fan Qianshi listened on with a heavy heart. Wu Qianyan stood by him regardless of the hostility. Furiously, she demanded, "Please stop with the nonsense." The Divine Lord has always been fond of the young master. His knowledge of Kung Fu generally came from the teachings of the Divine Lord, who has always treated him as a disciple. In fact, both of them recently ventured into the lair of the candle dragons to hunt for the egg. The egg was given to the young master as a gift, with clear guidelines on how to hatch the egg. If the Divine Lord did not care about him, why would she risk her life for him? If the Divine Lord really loved her disciple, she would have made him her successor. A candle dragon's egg does not tell us enough. Maybe she only gave it away to him to keep him busy. With a distraction, he would not interrupt her business. The criticism went on and on. Dihao was quite confused by the scene, since he was clearly looking through his mother's previous life. Now that she was immortalized, the playback should have stopped as well, but it did not. It was at this point that he finally realized how hurtful words could be. It was just like cyberbullying in the current era. What Fan Qianshi had gone through was not any less hurtful. Very often, Fan Qianshi's views would tend to the extreme. Also, he had to deal with his sense of inferiority after his confessions were rejected multiple times. Dihao could not help but wonder how he actually felt after listening to the ruthless remarks. Perhaps he would start to have some doubts about his relationship with Gu Shijiao and think that she really looked down on him. Worried, Dihao looked at the jade door fixedly. He knew that Di Fui had already recalled his memory and power as the master of heavenly law, which should be a good thing. If Di Fui emerged with newfound power, Fan Qianshi would immediately assume that his master was already immortalized and pass the role to him. At the very least, he would surely be suspicious of Di Fui's remarkable progress. Chapter 2950, The Fall of a Deity 12 to Fan Qianshi, that would pose as a heavy blow. Soon, the sealed door was suddenly opened. A man slowly emerged from behind the door. His body was fully clothed in glamorous purple robes. A mask of ghostly features hung onto his face. They could not see his appearance, but they could tell that the man was indeed Di Fui. He was still the same man, but his aura had totally changed. There he stood, firmly with an aura of mystery and authority. Gleams of auspicious seven-colored rays lit him up, making him look just as surreal as the celestial bodies. He had just become a god. Stunned, some could not help but ask, "Where's the creator of the universe? The Divine Lord?" No one could study Di Fui's expression. They could only hear his voice echoing from within. The Divine Lord has been immortalized. Dihao watched on and felt helpless. Fan Qianqi's face was ghostly pale with fright at that moment. He stared blankly at the door, but without any tears in his eyes. Wu Qianyan's cheeks were already bathed in tears, but seeing Fan Qianshi in his frozen state scared her, so she decided to give his arm a squeeze. Young master cried out, "Just cry." Instead of crying, Fan Qianshi started laughing hysterically. His voice was sonorous and resonant, having the force to cross the cloudy sky and perhaps even shatter stones. Without saying anything more, he took a leap and went through the jade door. Wu Qianyan called out loud, "Young master." She followed him through the door. Unlike Wu Qianyan, he was able to make it through. However, when Wu Qianyan got close to the door, her entire body caught fire. Before she even made it through the door, she was already turning into ashes. Di Fui seemed a little absent-minded, though he had just become a god. He certainly did not expect that he would have to deal with the two of them the moment he emerged from the inside. It was already too late for him to save them both. Startled, he clenched his fists in despair. It was already too late to save Wu Qianyan, but there was still a chance to keep Fan Qianshi alive. He was Gu Zijia's only disciple. If anything happened to him, Di Fui would feel even more sorry for her. Instantly, he turned around and went back in. However, as soon as he went in, the door became completely sealed again. Inevitably, the crowd was stunned, and so was Dihao. At that very moment, the forbidden land of God returned to its usual tranquility. Everyone looked at one another helplessly as no one knew what had just happened. They felt quite guilty, in fact. The six worlds were indebted to the Divine Lord for her kindness. She had just passed away, and yet they were already pushing her only disciple over the edge. Also, her only servant was, unfortunately, turned into dust. The ruthless ones, in particular, started to rethink their actions and felt guilty. However, what happened in the past could no longer be changed, not even with their utmost regrets. Hence, they continued to wait outside the door. They did not have high hopes for Fan Qianqi's survival, though. The last time he tried to enter, he was almost burned into ashes as well. Now that the door was shut, how was he going to survive in there for an entire month? Nevertheless, all of their suspicions were wrong. It only took half a month for the door to reopen. Streaks of golden light emerged from within and reached into the sky when it did. As soon as the golden light disappeared, the crowd stood with blank expressions on their face, for they could no longer remember anything about Gu Shijio, the creator of the universe. Two men walked out from the door, one after the other. One man was clothed fully in black, and the other in purple. Both of them were wearing masks to cover up their faces but did not hide their auras. Next to the man in black, a baby candle dragon paraded in enthusiasm. The crowd was still shocked, as they could no longer remember why they were there in the first place. However, as soon as they saw the men, realization dawned on them all of a sudden. Chapter 29:51. The Fall of a Deity. 13. Swiftly, they rushed forward and bent their knees. Welcome, Creator of the universe. And to you, Master of heavenly law. Cough. Dihao started to cough. Alerted, Gu Shijio woke up to check on him. She looked at him and quickly gave him a quick pat on the back. Baby, what is wrong? How did you choke yourself in your sleep? Dihao was finally able to catch his breath. Feeling overwhelmed, he rushed into his mother's arms and started muttering to himself. Mother, I am so glad you are well and alive. Bewildered, Gu Shijio did not know whether to cry or to laugh. Lovingly, she rubbed his head. Did you dream of me dying? Dihao said in all seriousness. Mother, you will live on for all eternity. Death will never occur to you. You and your sweet mouth, Gu Shijio teased. She began yawning and looking at the sky. The sky was still dark, and there was no sign of any light on the paper lining of the window. All right, let's get some more sleep. Gu Shijio patted gently on his body before closing her eyes with another yawn. Strangely, she had enough sleep, but she still felt tired. In fact, She had been sleeping a lot lately. It did not take long for Gu Shijio to fall asleep again. Dihao was tired, but he could not sleep. Troubled, he stared at his mother blankly in contemplation. In her previous life, she had treated Fan Qianshi very well. She must have set up some kind of spell in the forbidden land of God before her immortalization, so that Fan Qianshi could emerge as her successor and become the next creator of the universe. Judging from the consecutive events that occurred after her immortalization, it seemed that Fan Qianshi, Di Fui, and the rest of the people must have forgotten about Gu Shijio as the Divine Lord. Perhaps she was reluctant to see her own disciple turning against Di Fui and for the two to become enemies. It seemed that their memories were erased with good intentions. But of course, all of this was only Di Hao's speculations. At the moment, he felt that he needed to visit the forbidden land of God to uncover more of its secrets. However, first, he would need to find the location. The place looked like somewhere the master of the heavenly law ought to know, but its architectural composition and the placement of the star chart were unlike anything he could recall. Dihao knew about the place where the master of heavenly law lived and tried to piece the information together, but nothing matched. Helplessly, he closed his eyes and heaved a sigh. If he still had his original power, finding out about the place was not a problem at all. The place had been around for more than thousands of years, but it would be challenging to locate the site solely based on what he saw from the playback images. Perplexed, he was surprised that he got to experience Fan Qianshi's story by the end of the playback, as that was a part that he never asked for. It was a strange encounter indeed. Fan Qianshi must have turned his love into hatred, but that part of his painful memory was erased once he stepped foot into the blinding golden light from the forbidden land of God. How did he remember to hate Di Fui and Gu Shijio? Perhaps not all was erased. After all, the man was still eager to replace Di Fui, so numerous plots were made to take his enemy's life away once and for all. A thought suddenly inspired Dihao. Perhaps the reason he could continue watching the story despite Gu Zijia's demise was that Fan Qianshi was tracing the same dream at the same time, which allowed Dihao to trace his part of the story as well. He looked at his hands and was impressed by his remarkable tracing ability. Should he try again? The boundless sky was in an elegant shade of royal blue, with countless starlight that twinkled in the distance. Drenched, Fan Qianshi woke up abruptly from his nightmare. The same nightmare had been haunting him for a while now, so the images had gradually become clearer and clearer. Chapter 2952. The Fall of a Deity, 14. The same nightmare had been haunting him for a while now, so the images had gradually become clearer and clearer. The dreams became especially intense after he met Gu Shijio. It was so surreal that it felt like it happened only yesterday. He stared at the starry night sky before raising his hand to take some readings. "Fool! What a fool!" he scornfully said. Reluctantly, he got up from the bed and tidied up his robes. He turned around and saw a dark shadow lingering in the corner. In fact, it was very well hidden. The darkness was able to conceal its tracks, but not the little source of light on the top of its head. "Little Black, get over here," Fan Qianshi demanded. The black shadow made a hiss and did as told, though rather unwillingly. It was the candle dragon. Its current body size was only 1% of its usual size, more or less like the size of a snake. It surrounded Fan Qianshi in a circle before looking up in an arrogant manner, as if it was questioning him why it needed to be around at all. In response, Fan Qianshi gently stroked the little spot of light on its head. The candle dragon was surprised by the sudden gesture, so it retreated. Very quickly, Fan Qianshi grasped it by its overhead light to stop it from backing away. "Bastard, are you responsible for the nightmares I have been having lately?" he asked brusquely. He was pulling its light so hard that it almost fell off. In pain, the candle dragon desperately tried to break free by pushing back with its claws, but nothing worked. The more it struggled, the more painful it got. Annoyed, it started making a long, doleful cry in protest. Fan Qianshi seemed to understand its language. "As a dragon, you cannot even get your tone right. You sound more like a donkey instead. Have you forgotten what you really are, Because you've been too busy being a donkey? What a useless creature. The remark irritated the candle dragon, so it shouted back at him, You left me in the herd of donkeys when I was young. I even took one of the donkeys as my mother. Now you are blaming me for sounding like a donkey? It was you who covered me in the skin of a donkey skin before letting me out in public, saying that it served as good camouflage. Why are you even complaining right now? Fan Chinshur gazed at it, so it did the same. Helplessly, Fan Chinshur gave in. You are a candle dragon with the attitude of a donkey. If I raised you in a herd of pigs, perhaps you might end up behaving like one, the candle dragon sarcastically remarked. Fan Chinshur had never won an argument with the candle dragon, so he decided that there was no point trying. You are not allowed to use that lousy spell on me that causes me to have nightmares. Otherwise, I will peel off your donkey skin. The candle dragon gently shook the light on its head in disapproval. Actually, I did not mean to give you frightening dreams. My scales are naturally formed with a special ability to rekindle one's deepest obsession. You are obsessed with something, which makes you an easy victim to fall into your nightmares, it patiently explained. With a smirk, Fan Chinshur found its explanation hard to believe. She is not my deepest obsession. My obsession is to become the only man who rules the 6 worlds. He then added, You should stay away from me. The candle dragon was offended. Are you trying to send me away again? Fan Chinshur closed his eyes as he replied, Go as far away as possible from me. I get frustrated whenever I see you. His words were hurtful to the candle dragon, so it decided to leave. I'm running away from home now. Don't regret what you have said. Fan Chinshur remained unresponsive. The candle dragon lingered by the edge of the hall and seemed ready to go, but Fan Chinshur remained indifferent to its departure. Suddenly, the candle dragon added, Actually, it was not entirely my fault that you had those nightmares. I overused my power, which allowed Diha to look into parts of your unconscious mind. Chapter 29:53. Are you going to betray me? Before the candle dragon finished speaking, Fan Chinshur was already pulling its overhead light again eagerly. Dihao, can you see Dihao? The candle dragon proudly replied, Yes, I had a coincidental encounter with a spell from his soul. Can you lure his soul here? Fan Chinshur seemed to have a new idea. The candle dragon was perplexed. What are you going to do with the child's soul? I only asked if you can do it. It depends if the opportunity presents itself. I will only be able to do it if he uses the same spell. Give it a try then. Try to lure his soul here and trap him. The candle dragon was quite reluctant, though. It had its own principles. An adult's personal grudges should not involve children. What are you going to do with him after I lure his soul here? If his soul is away from his body for an extended period of time, it will cause irreversible damage to his health. Are you going to betray me? Fan Chinshur asked in an ice-cold tone. The candle dragon was intimidated by his ferocity, so it surrendered to him. All right, I will try, but there is no guarantee. Fan Chinshur gave its overhead light a gentle stroke. You only have to do your best. You're the only one I can trust now. Don't try to sweet-talk me. You are also one to dismiss others when their job is done, the candle dragon said, obviously immune to his lavish compliments. Fan Chinshur did not deny. I have used many people and sacrificed many lives, but I have never hurt you, have I? To which the candle dragon answered, But you chose to raise me in a herd of donkeys, all because I was a gift from your master. Can we stop talking about the past? All right, let's see what you can do. If you perform well, you will be rewarded, Fan Chinshur sternly said. When Gu Shijio woke up, Dihao was still sleeping soundly. She did not alarm him and decided to get out of bed first. Most of her attention was spent on her daughter, as the naughty little girl was quite attached to her. Her son, in return, was slightly neglected by her lack of attention. The way that the boy snuggled up to her before she was asleep was a clear sign of the lack of attention he had received. She felt guilty for neglecting him, so she decided to make something good for the boy to eat. It did not take long for her to prepare a few dishes and a soup for him as breakfast. She set up the table nicely before waking the boy up. However, time to get up now. Dihao did not move. His eyelids remained shut and did not even shift a little. The boy's lack of vigilance came as a surprise to her, as it was not how he normally behaved. She took a closer look and was shocked. Quickly, she tried to check his breathing. Panicked, she could feel her body going numb. Dihao was not breathing at all. There was no breathing and no heart rate. Furthermore, out of the 10 fragments of his soul, only 1 fragment remained. The rest was gone. Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. Her place was secured with the strongest form of wizardry barrier. None of the spirits could make it through the barrier. It was even more secure than being in a safe box. So how did little Dihao's soul go missing? Had he used the soul wandering spell to go on a mission on his own? It did not seem likely, however. The soul wandering spell would cause him to lose more than half of his kung fu foundation, not forgetting the damage that the spell would do to his body. Unless very necessary, no one would risk getting their soul injured by wandering around without a body. Dihao was a careful boy with a plan. He would not use the spell without notifying her first. What was going on? When the problem involved someone she cared about, it was difficult for her to stay composed. Especially since it involved her son's safety, she could no longer sit still. Immediately, she gave Di Fui a call. He answered it as quickly as he could. "Baby, you are early. Miss me?" Gu Shijio was not in the mood for flirting. Something is going on with Hao-er. Her voice was trembling with fear. Di Fui finally took the call more seriously. "What is wrong with him? Don't worry. Stay calm. Speak slowly," he reassured her. Chapter 2954. May Mother live on for tens of thousands of years. Gu Shijio briefly told him about her observations of Dihao in the morning. "Don't worry. He is a boy of remarkable qualities, so nothing dangerous can ever happen to him. I'm going back now. Wait for me. I will be with you soon." His voice was surprisingly comforting, especially when her head was in a swirl of confusion and helplessness. During their conversation, Gu Shijio could overhear the conversation between Di Fui and their daughter. "You come on down. We should go home now." Di Shiyue sounded like she was sobbing. "Father, you are finally releasing me from these ridiculously tough practices." It was obvious from the tone of her voice that she had been having a miserable time. Not a day went by without any practice, and the intensity of her training had caused her to feel distressed to the point where she started resenting it. "You are dismissed temporarily. Your mother misses you," Di Fui calmly said. "May Mother live on for tens of thousands of years." "Silly, how could you curse your mother like that? She's going to live longer than that." "Long live Mother, for tens of thousands of years." The playful interaction went on. Gu Shijio listened closely to them. She was in a blind panic before she made the call. Nevertheless, listening to Di Fui's little chit-chat with their daughter made her feel much better. Maybe the matter was not as serious as she thought. After all, perhaps he had already figured it all out. Even though she would have loved to continue eavesdropping on their conversation, she ended the call to focus on the boy. She knew 1 or 2 things about the soul summoning spell. Without wasting any time, she quickly cast some spells to call for his soul to return to his body. To her disappointment, none of her spells works, and Dihao's soul still remained largely on the loose. Di Fui and Di Shiyue, on the other hand, were already quickly making their way back. Due to the incredible speed at which they were traveling, everything else passed by like a flash of light. To travel faster, Di Fui was carrying Di Shiyue safely on his back. "Father, please slow down. I'm feeling dizzy," Shiyue expressed her discomfort. Usually, she would fly on her own. It was rare for Di Fui ever to carry her on his back. Normally, she enjoyed being carried, but this time, he was going too fast. "Shiyue, you will have to get used to this as it will occur again in the future," Di Fui said strictly. He did not slow down. Instead, he sped up. Thoughtfully, he offered her a green cloth to cover up her eyes to ease her dizziness. Due to his incredible abilities, Di Fui took less than 2 hours to cover a total distance of 2,000 miles. But During his absence, Gu Shijio knew that she needed to get things in order on her end. She sent Mu Feng and Mu Lei to the underworld to see if Di Hao's soul had been captured. Meanwhile, Mu Jian and Mu Yin were sent to check on the wizardry barrier to see there was any breach during their rest. As for her, she had to stay behind with Di Hao and keep strengthening his body with an array of spells so that she would not lose the last fragment of his soul. Seeing Di Fui return meant a lot to her. Relieved, she ran towards him as soon as she saw him. Fui, come and check on him. She tried to stay calm, but the terrified look on her face spilled the truth of how anxious she truly felt. Her fingers went numb and were already ice cold. Di Fui grasped her by the hand and gave her a tight hug. Don't be afraid. Di Xue removed the blindfold to see her mother, but was distracted as soon as she saw Di Hao lying lifelessly on the bed. She jumped down and was ready to rush to the bed. What happened to brother? Di Fui had to pull her back. Xiyue, stay where you are. Stand aside and watch. The muscle chimed in and asked, should I bring our young lady outside? The presence of a child could lead to unnecessary trouble. Therefore, the muscle thought that it would be better for the adults if little Xiyue were brought outside. Di Fui disagreed. There is no need for that. Let her stay. Gu Shijio looked at him in bewilderment. So Di Fui explained himself. Xiyue has to grow up. There is no need for us to keep her away from everything. He then gave her hand a tight squeeze. Quietly, Gu Shijio agreed, for she understood that her husband was only trying to train their daughter to keep calm in situations such as the one they were facing. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.